This is the regular monthly meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission, Wednesday, November 20th. Welcome to TV 79. Calling the meeting to order. First business is we have two sets of minutes from October 16th and October 26th. Let's do the 16th first. And thank you. Jean is here tonight filling in for Jamie, who's under the weather, doing our minutes tonight. So thank you very much for stepping in at the last minute. I really appreciate it. So, and then so she might need a little more help and clarification. So just holler if you're not clear on something. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anybody, any changes? Questions?
I have one.
Okay, Mike.
On page 3, under my update, and I'll give you, Jeannie, I'll give you my copy here, but in the center of the paragraph it says, Mr. Houck next detailed the site plan specific to the potential bathhouse. He also specified the second variance being requested relating to the lack of the new plan not meeting the setback. It's kind of like a double negative. So I think we could just strike the word lack. So if you're there, you don't need my copy, then that was all I had.
Or we'd be removing the lack of the.
Yeah, it could be just relating to the new plan not meeting the setback.
Anything else? Everybody good? Okay, then we can have a motion to approve the minutes of October 16th. Mary Louise, second. Susan, all in favor? Vote. Okay, those are good. Okay, next are the minutes of the October 26th, which was our Saturday Parks tour, done by yours truly. So, any questions, comments, changes? No? No, they did good? Yeah, excellent. Walking and writing? Thanks. Okay, then I'll take a motion.
So
I'll
moved.
jump at once. Okay, Mike. Okay, Thierry, 1 second? Sure. Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Okay, quick and easy. Okay, next we are going to move on to the Pear Tree Improvement Project. We have 3 guests this evening. I'd like to welcome our Police Chief, Don Anderson, Captain Jeremiah Marin, and our first select woman, Jamie Stevenson. So I'm going to turn over to Mike to give an update.
Sure.
And then our guests will be making a presentation.
Great. Okay, so I'll just try to set some context and just bring the commission up to speed here. So when last we met, you may recall, the building committee was getting ready to go to the ZBA. We had plans and we had a model from our architect Neil Houck. We kind of deliberated over that at the building committee and authorized Neil to go to the ZBA. In fact, essentially, we had prepared our application and submitted it to the ZBA. I'm trying to remember the date of that. It might have been the 16th or somewhere mid-October in order to get it in for the 11/20 ZBA meeting, which is this evening. And between then and now, 2 developments took place, which I'll update the commission on and the public on. So the first is that along the way, over the course of the last number of months, in the course of just kind of gathering up our information and trying to better understand what the requirements were for whatever we were going to do with at the beach, whether it was to renovate initially discussed or a new building, we'd reached out to Darien Police Marine Division, and just for those of you who may not know, Darien Police Marine Division has had space allocated to it at one of the 2 buildings at the beach, what we refer to as the concession building, the larger of the 2 buildings. And that space has been used for storage up until now. It's about 12.5 by 9.5 foot. It's about 115 square feet. That space is locked. It's only accessible by the Marine Division members. So in the course of developing requirements and better understanding what we were doing with the new plan, as I mentioned, we reached out a number of times. Just as it turned out, end of October, we received a response from Darien Police, from Chief Anderson, in fact. And that response had kind of laid out a set of requests that answered a number of questions, but in fact kind of went beyond a little bit in terms of what we had been anticipating with the requirements as we understood it. And these guys can do a better job explaining it than I can, so maybe I'll just tee that up and leave that for them to explain. So that was the first of the developments, and not entirely unexpected, but certainly in terms of the scope of what we understood a bit of something that we didn't anticipate. The second of the developments is that Jamie, who's been monitoring this and following kind of activities very, very closely, reached out to the building committee and shared some thoughts and some guidance. And in that note, Jamie asked that the building committee really nail down some things that were in progress but hadn't been fully nailed down up until that point. An example of that would be the coastal area management analysis. I think the term of art is called CAM, and that is kind of a thorough analysis of the conditions at the beach, the coastal area, and a kind of an analysis of both the existing and then kind of conditions post whatever we might be planning on doing down there. And in terms of background, we always understood we needed to do that. There wasn't any specific guidance that we were given, not that we aggressively reached out and asked for it because we were thinking we'd get that done at some point along the way. But as we were going back and doing the research and getting preparation for the ZBA application, we pulled the ZBA application from the 1978 work that was done when the buildings that are there today were built. And in that packet of information that was provided to us by Jeremy Ginsberg and folks, there's a letter from a fellow by the name of Dave Emerson. It's about a page and a half. And that document seems to kind of lay out an analysis or some observations about the conditions, the environmental conditions of the beach. I wasn't sure what that was, reached back out to Jeremy, and lo and behold, that was kind of, at least at that time, served as kind of that to tick the box on the coastal analysis. And at that point, we understood from Jeremy that going into planning and zoning, we'd have to have that. So that was great because we at least had more clarity in terms of what we would need and when we would need it for. And going back to the note we had received from Jamie, I think Jamie's point was, we're starting the approval cycle here, and once again, Jamie's here, so Jamie can speak for herself, but my interpretation of it was as we were kind of moving through the approval gates and starting the approval cycle, there was no time better than the present to kind of nail down those different elements so that we'd have them, even though initially I guess it was anticipated that'd be required for planning and zoning. It'd be helpful to have that for ZBA as well in case any questions came up. And so that's one of the examples of a request that was presented to us through Jamie's note. Another was a request to just better understand something that we as the community's been asking for. I guess in hindsight's always 20/20. It would have been good to have just done that. Didn't seem like as we were working through this, but what I'm referring to is an analysis of what could be done with the $96,000 that would be available to us as 50% of the appraised value of the existing structures, and that's based upon the 50% rule that FEMA defines. So with that, and in fact coincidentally I kind of kicked that off anyway a couple of days earlier than Jamie's note, but with that I've gone back out to Neil Hauk, our architect, and I've asked Neil to provide us with a document that describes essentially a set of, really kind of a menu, a list of things. So what I'm expecting to get back would be, as an example, there's the price of a window, we have X number of windows in the structure as an example. The price of the install price of a window multiplied out by X number of windows and the cost of that as an example. Doors, door jambs, porcelain fixtures. So we'll have a menu, and that should, I think, satisfy, I think generally speaking, the inquiry around what can we do with the $96,000. It's not going to have a plan. I mean, we're not going to go ahead and do an architectural rendering of anything because we really don't know, because there's a whole range of options in terms of what you can. It's a menu that we'll pick and choose from, but that's another example of something that we'll tick the box on now and nail down, and we'll have that behind us. So there's a series of things, as I mentioned, and once again Jamie's here, that had come to us, and that was on November 4th. So two things kind of coincidental with one another. The letter that we got from Darien PD, and then Jamie's note requesting some additional information. And with that, we made the decision that instead of moving forward with our application to the ZBA, even though we had already filed all of the paperwork and we were on the agenda for the ZBA, we withdrew our application to the ZBA with the thought that we'll finish these elements, kind of nail down as many pieces of the puzzle as we possibly can to benefit, you know, the work that we're doing as well as the community, and try to answer as many different questions that we can. And, you know, once we feel we've gotten to that point, we'll then contemplate going back to the ZBA. So, once again, I think in hindsight, it would have been a good idea to have done some of these things along the way, but we're kind of learning as we go. And I think the net result of it is that we'll have things nailed down quite well. So that's a bit of an update. And maybe the only other piece that I'll throw into the mix here is that when the request came in, the clarification came in from Chief Anderson, kind of representing what the Marine Division was looking for, my initial response was going to be, oh, this is pretty straightforward. Not straightforward in terms of, you know, what was being asked for, but like, I thought the path was straightforward. I was going to take that information, bring it over to Neil Houck, and just ask Neil to kind of give us an understanding of how to fit that in. And then I realized I was probably getting a little over my skis. And why was I getting over my skis? Because I reminded myself that what the building committee was working on was essentially the objectives that were defined by the commission. And as these guys will explain, what was in this request of October 31 went beyond, certainly goes beyond what was in the original commission's set of objectives. And then similarly, since the building committee is working off of the charge that was given to us by the Board of Selectmen and Jamie, which is also based upon the commission's objectives, these pieces all dovetail together. So, you know, my request here this evening is that we, and thank you guys for coming here, because it's a lot that you'll do a lot better job at explaining stuff than I'll be able to, of kind of having the commission understand what's being requested, and then at the end of the day, if there's a desire for the building committee to move forward with this, we're not going to do that unless we've gotten a green light from both the commission and ultimately kind of get the charge to reflect that. So that's my read on what's happened here. It's not as though we haven't been doing any work. You know, we've certainly been continuing on with the research. We've been in contact with Neil Houck, Weston and Sampson. We've confirmed, I think, at least an initial kind of set of guidelines for what we can expect with things like this coastal area management report. And if you guys have any question in terms of anything else that we've got going on with the building committee, just feel free to ask. But maybe in deference and with respect to, you know, our guests here, I'll shut up now and I'll just maybe ask you guys if you'd like to. Maybe we'll kick things off with Chief Anderson, if you'd like to.
Sure. So this issue about the Marine Division and space at Pear Tree Point Beach dates back to the tenure of Chief Osborne. At that time, I was the Administrative Services Captain. I didn't oversee the Marine Division, and luckily Chief Osborne got to retire, and it ended up on my desk as the Chief of Police. Now, we were asked a specific question that in the Pear Tree Point building project, generally, would we be looking for Marine Division space to stay there? And the answer was yes, we were looking for Marine Division space back in, and at that point I had no idea that this issue would be where we are tonight, or what exactly was happening at Pear Tree Point Beach. Pre-Sandy, Captain Marin can speak to this probably better than I, the Marine Division down at Pear Tree Point Beach had a combined storage and office. In there was a desk and a phone and a computer and Marine Division equipment behind a locked door. When the request came to the police department as we were looking to maintain space in the Pear Tree Point Beach area where our boat is docked, the answer was yes. So since that time, I was not aware, we learned much later, that apparently from FEMA regulations, we can't have an office in the first floor of the building. So at the end of the day here, the police department is looking for something that we already had to maintain. And in my mind, that was maybe, you know, well, if it has to be floodable space or there's going to be water in there, an aluminum chair and an aluminum desk where someone can sit down and write a report or interview someone. At the end of the day, and we discussed this with the police commission tonight at the meeting, if whatever happens at Pear Tree Point Beach, the police department is just asking that it be not left on the cutting room floor, that we would have an option to have some workable police-related space down on our waterfront, where our Marine Division is located. That, when you distill it all down, that's where we stand.
I don't have much more conceptually to add to that, other than I think the history behind having office space down at the concession area of the pavilion there was the simple fact is the law enforcement on the water has changed over the last 20-something years, and it's called for activities to be conducted not just on the boat, not just on a dock. And when you're talking about investigating boat accidents and follow-ups with individuals or boaters that are holding classes, that type of thing, there was a need that presented itself to have some office space. So since, I want to say it was closer to post 9/11, but the guys who have worked in and out of that office for the last 10 years or so are telling me it began around 2004. So from 2004 to about 2012, we did occupy that office space down there, used it both in the capacity as an office, where the officers were writing reports and conducting interviews, and then also as a storage. Since Sandy, I guess they had some problems with some mildew and some mold. They tried to clean it several times, and it just has been determined that it's not a workable space for office-related activity anymore. And that's kind of where they brought them to the current space that the Darien Boat Club has offered to give them, and that consists of what used to be a space that housed a couple of lockers that the members had there. And I've only seen this space once, and I know it's very difficult to have even two people in there at the same time with two chairs and to even shut the door. So that's what they've been working on for the last several years, and kind of what's brought us here tonight.
If I can, maybe I'll just add a little more color here. I think what's kind of added the wrinkle, with at least the building as we're currently contemplating it, we're proceeding with it, is that the building is elevated to be FEMA compliant, and what FEMA is, I guess, is very strongly indicated to us is that lower level, I know we're calling it a two-story building, but it's essentially an elevated building with a kind of enclosed lower level. That lower level is for storage only. They're very clear with us, and we met with them back a month or so ago, Diana Ivkovich from FEMA, and asked the question, and we actually asked it in the context of the lifeguards. Lifeguards, there any break, can they kind of be down there? And the message that came back to us very clearly is that space, by definition, is not meant to be habitable, which is meant to be, it's not meant to be improved, and it's not meant to be something, so the point of having a desk as an example, I'm not sure that, you can go back and ask that question, but I don't think that's going to pass the snicker test with them. I think they're very clear in terms of what they will allow. The other aspect of it is that space has to be constructed in such a way where those walls are breakaway, so it doesn't impede the flow of, there's nothing that's impeding the flow of water. So, once again, if the objective is to have, if I understand it, and I think as you guys laid out in the letter, I think if the objective of that space is to have it as a kind of a working office with electricity, as an example, with lighting, lighting is a separate issue, but with electricity, with potentially usable with a computer, that can't happen in that lower space, as it's just by definition any longer. So we are talking about, and I think this is important for the commission to understand, we are talking about carving out some space in that elevated, the elevated level of the new structure. Maybe the only other bit of color that I'll add here is that we did have an opportunity to meet. So we got a letter on October 31st, and I believe that we met the following Monday. Jamie had called together a meeting, a number of members of the building committee were there, as well as members of the town administration. And we did have a chance to discuss it a bit more. And I think the initial takeaway was, and this is important, I think, for the commission to understand, the initial takeaway was that we would look to, and this is where Neil comes in, our architect, we would look to determine how we could accommodate the requirements of the Marine Division within the footprint as it currently exists. So we're not talking about expanding the size of the footprint. We're talking about, know, whatever space gets allocated for that usage is gonna be taken away from something else. So that's kind of the initial concept, you know, kind of going into this. And so, I mean, I think with that, I would ask the committee if you've got questions for Chief Anderson and Captain Barron. Now's the time to ask it, because I think there's a decision that needs to be made here in terms of going forward.
Susan?
I just have a question about the work you do. I think, you know, I'm not a voter, sorry. And so just knowing like the volume you're looking at, like the challenges you face, like you talked about 9/11, like what is it like now with all the terrorism threats, and how much support are we getting from like places like the Coast Guard? Or are you guys basically are fine with the
Marin
best?
can certainly speak to that, because we got a letter on that very topic from our Marine Division officers, and Captain Marin oversees the Marine Division, as of when he got promoted in a year. We're doing a lot more, like a lot of different things. Local police and local law enforcement is doing a lot more than with less federal assistance that we've had in a lot of different regards in years past. I'll refer to him to speak to it.
The main part is, post 9/11, the Coast Guard has basically deferred to law enforcement municipalities to conduct law enforcement along the coastline up until Mid-Sound, so to speak, and that falls on each and every jurisdiction along the, you know, the coast here in Connecticut. They're focusing their efforts more on homeland security type issues, and they leave, you know, A through Z, the rest of it to the local municipalities. So the Homeland Security has asked us, and not specifically, but just kind of generically, that all local law enforcement that patrol waterways to have access to their marine vehicles throughout the course of the year, 365, 24/7. And that was a big change since prior to 9/11. So to answer your question, the Coast Guard doesn't have a ton of involvement in that type of thing, and I think that's why they've asked us to kind of step up those efforts.
Would you be using the facility then year-round?
We're talking basically that 3 months during the summer would be the busiest time for us to be using that type of space. That's the way it always kind of has been for the last 10 years.
So what hours would you expect during the summer months that there would be manned?
Well, manned is, what you're asking is when they would be in there. That's hard to kind of tell. I mean, they are required to be out on the water, and we schedule their shifts accordingly to when we know the largest boating population is going to be out on the water. You know, fireworks displays and different special events are different things, but, you know, the weekends, during the week, especially Fridays, Friday evenings, you know, they're kind of all over the place. So it's hit or miss as to when they would actually be occupying that space.
Do you have an idea of how many boats there are in Darien, and the usage of boats and motorways and non? Because it would speak to how much.
If not, Harbor Master Bill is here. and
Oh, yeah,
probably could.
yeah, could
You
help
probably
with
give
that.
a lot more accurate response than I could.
Mayor,
If you might, please.
421 registered moorings in the waters that I patrol. Darien Harbor has about 225 boats. Norotan Bay has about 40. And then the boat club has 250-ish or so on the piers, on the docks.
And we did get data that Darien per capita has the largest boating ownership in the state of Connecticut.
If I can ask some questions maybe that I think I've heard from, you know, the members of the public too, maybe just to kind of act as a proxy here. So one is, just in terms of kind of how you guys, logistically, how you do what you do down at the beach, meaning, you know, I think the question's been asked about the distance between, if you were to have an office in this new facility where the existing buildings are, the distance between, you know, you guys having a presence there and where your boat is, and kind of getting from one, you know, point A to point B, and you know, in an emergency, as an example. And, you know, it seemed like, I think the question is asked in the context of it being kind of like suboptimal, like what would you want to have you guys, like, you know, directly next to, you know, which is kind of what you've got with the boat club. So, you know, if you can kind of help with that.
I don't envision, nor have I ever envisioned, I was on the Marine Division reluctantly. I got drafted for 6 years into the Marine Division, and I kind of went kicking and screaming because I was not a voter. We don't have that anymore because we have plenty of folks who want to volunteer for the Marine Division. But on a summertime day, any time of the day, in the summertime, on a nice day, I don't envision our officers sitting in any type of office or any type of storage facility or a beach chair anywhere and having to run to the boat. They're going to be on the boat. They're going to be doing patrol. Something with office work, you're doing paperwork and either a boating under the influence or a boating collision, or on a day when perhaps, you have torrential rain.
Yeah.
And you might be in the office, but you're there by the boat if you have to go out and get someone who shouldn't be out there, which happens on occasion.
Yeah.
That's more of what the office area that we're looking for. I don't envision that any Marine officers are going to be spending their entire shift on a summertime or springtime day when the boaters are out boating in that office.
We're going to open it up to public comments shortly, and then the officers are sticking around, so we'll see if we can kind of get some questions answered as well. So, and I guess the other question I've heard certainly is that, once again, maybe a bit more clarity. The question is, you guys have got space at the boat club, and why is that insufficient given the work that you guys have to do on some regular basis? Why isn't that working out? Like, why is there a need for something more than what you've got at the boat club?
I think it's, the main part of it is just the sheer size of it. It's a modified kind of closet that's a little bit bigger, a little smaller than a walk-in closet that has been taken from past locker space. We did use the concession area office space for interviews and follow-ups, and that just doesn't happen. And the boat club space, if there's an incident where we need to conduct a follow-up investigation regarding an accident or a under the influence type situation, a lot of the times the officers are taken away from the beach altogether, and it has to be conducted back at the police department.
Got it.
And that's not something that we would be our first choice in how to handle a matter like that. We are extremely grateful for the space that's been given us for the length of time that it's been given to us, but it's just, and as the chief mentioned, when we were asked if we would want a space in it, the answer is always going to be yes. Just it is.
Do most of the other communities up and down Fairfield County bound have a substation right on the waterfront, do you know?
I am unaware of any sound front community in Connecticut that does not have something for their Marine Division where they respond to and they patrol out. I know Stamford absolutely does, Greenwich does, Norwalk does, Fairfield does, and Westport does.
Every single Fairfield County coastal community has a Marine Division space, whatever they want to call it, they do have that space. I am not aware of any other town along the coast of Connecticut that does not have a space for their law enforcement officials along the waterway.
And granted, some of these municipalities are deep water port, Bridgeport, Stamford, they have barges, I get it. They get a lot of commercial traffic. We have a fair amount of recreational and commercial going in, at least by our waterways.
Are the offices in all the other areas, are they on the first floor, like in Westport, Greenwich, Stamford? Would you know if they're elevated?
I'm not 100% sure about all of them. They're probably, the ones I am thinking of are probably located in areas that don't have to abide by the same FEMA regulations and rules that the space that's being considered here in Darien does. And then to touch again on, Mike, what you said about the officers physically being located either up near the current concession area versus the boat club. And the bottom line is, as the chief mentioned, we're not like in a fire department type environment where we're waiting for the call. The guys should be out there. They are going to be out there most of the time. To really put your finger on a time that the guys are going to be occupying that office, it's tough to do. They got to run across the parking lot because it had to be the end of their shift, and they're completing their end of the shift paperwork in the office, and a call comes in, and that's what they're going to have to do.
Got it. Yep.
So your preference would be to do like all your investigations, like your interviews, like kind of close to where the incident happened versus transferring like, people over to the main police department, would you say, or evidence or anything that, you know what I mean? I don't know that, I don't know.
That would be the preference. I mean, these aren't black and white incidents. It's going to be a case-by-case basis depending on what they're dealing with.
You know,
And also you probably need privacy, doing it in a concession stand might not be the best place to interview someone that's being brought up on charges on something, maybe, possibly.
that's true.
I mean, just to put that out there. At least I wouldn't want to be.
Sometimes the incident may involve somebody docks their boat at the boat club, potentially, right? We try to do things reasonably, and we try not to have other people get involved in business they don't need to get involved in, and I'm not saying that would always happen. Certainly, you'd want a private interview space to conduct your investigation. The only thing really we have to go back to headquarters for a lot of times, a boating under the influence, obviously, they have to be brought back because we have machinery that we don't have on the waterfront to conduct that investigation.
Right.
Most other things can be conducted down there.
Understood. Okay.
Jamie? Thank you. I really appreciate being here tonight, and I want everybody to know that I'm here to have a conversation with everyone. It's a community conversation around a project that, in my opinion, has taken on a really negative life of its own. And that's pretty uncustomary for the town. Usually we conduct our business and our processes, taking input both positive and negative as it comes and addressing those things. For some reason, this one has gotten fairly uncivil. So, I'm here to help work with the concerned citizens and to work with the commission to try and come to the idea of a common vision. What is it that we as a community, what is it that the Parks and Rec Commission believes is the right thing to move forward for our community so that we can, as we have with all projects in the past, improve the quality of living here in Darien for everyone, and to hopefully help to support our real estate values overall and encourage families to move to our community. So I'm really here in that spirit. I want to talk directly to the Parks and Rec Commission, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have of the memo that I sent to you on November 4th. I do think there's information that needs to be answered. Some questions that have been asked by members of the public for quite some time that deserve to be answered before we really move forward with any kind of approval process. But one thing that I really want to underscore, because I've seen how the committee, and a number of people are here from the committee tonight, and some new members of the Board of Selectmen, thank you for coming. The Parks and Rec Commission is the sponsor of this project. And as such, you have to take an ownership interest in this project. And I feel that the committee has been floundering a little bit, taking on the role of really being planners and advocates, and God bless Mike, who meets with anyone and everyone for coffee to walk them through the project, which is great, Mike. Thank you for doing that. But I think it's important for the commission to have a discussion and talk about either rededicating yourself to this project in the face of community opposition at this point, or not. I think it's legitimate to have that conversation. And if so, then I would hope that the commission would become advocates for this project and work hand in hand with the committee, as I know you are, and the community to help alleviate the concerns that they are bringing forward. I think that another important task for the commission is to go back and look at the project charge. I think it's gotten muddied a little bit, and I'll give some specific examples. And I think of the charge in the same way that I think of the charge to the Oxbridge Elementary School Building Committee that are ed specifications. The Board of Ed gave the committee a very specific list of ed specs, and then the committee takes that and executes a project. There were some circumstances where the ed specs couldn't be met. So the committee had to go back to the Board of Ed and have them discuss it and make modifications to the charge and to those ed specs. So I'm going to encourage you to have, as part of your discussion, a conversation about the charge, because in the original charge it says that the committee should rehabilitate or replace the outdated concession and bathhouse building. But where we are today is we have a plan that has both of those things. And I think that this commission voted specifically to build a new facility at a meeting in the past, and I don't have that date with me, but I think Mike can help me get that date. But right now we have a plan that has both. It has a piece of the building that's rehabilitated and a piece of the building that's new. I think that's inconsistent with the decisions that this commission has made. So please discuss that and make a determination if you're looking to rehabilitate, you're looking to build new, you're looking to do both, whatever your decision is on that.
Jamie, July 17th.
Thank you. And then further, please define concession. You know, concession can be anything from, as we know it today, kitchen equipment owned by a vendor that comes in every year, or it could be vending machines. So, you know, I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the committee would appreciate guidance on what it is the commission desires for our public in the way of concessions. And there's some other conversations that can be had. Not easy, but certainly can talk to the Planning and Zoning Commission to see if they might modify their regulations on food trucks, for example, as an innovative way to address the desire for concession. Part of the charge is to improve beach resiliency and reduce wind, water erosion by increasing natural shoreline areas. So this goes right directly to the idea of getting a third-party coastal consultant to come in and really do that analysis and tell us, is it okay to build or rehabilitate in this particular zone, or should we make a different choice? I think that information has to come first. The charge also says to replace the guard shack. You've already done that, so that can come out of the charge. And provide ADA accessible dock. Well, I think you might want to talk about extending that. I believe that we have a desire to make the entire facility ADA compliant. It should be. It's actually the law. So I think we need to modify the charge to be more specific in that regard. FEMA compliance. We talk often, make the comparison between the Norotan Yacht Club and this particular parcel of land. But they're in different zones, as I understand, different FEMA zones. So the lower level at Norotan Yacht Club is well utilized. And they did a great job, and I don't know if Randy's here tonight, but
yeah, Randy's here.
He did a great job on that project. I don't know if the zone where the proposed building would allow for that same kind of lower level use. So I think it's very important to document that so people can understand completely why they are different. You heard about the information from the Darien Marine Division. I attended their commission meeting today, and I've asked the Police Commission to discuss and make a determination at the commission level if they're in support of what the Marine Division is asking for. And then to add, if you want to stick with the plan that includes dining decks and decks around the pavilion, that should be added into the charge, in my opinion. You know, probably a few other things. So really what I'm asking is to put together your quote-unquote ed specs. Let's go back, let's take the time and make sure that we have it right so that the committee isn't really struggling with these ideas and making assumptions, that really aren't consistent with the charge.
Jimmy, if I can,
Yes.
I think what you're kind of guiding us on is to synchronize the charge with the commission's objectives.
Yes,
And they're a little out of sync
absolutely.
at the moment.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's created some challenges.
I would agree, I would agree. And, there's a list of questions that I think everybody's eager to hear, answering the questions that were put forward by the members of the RTM. I think you've done that. What do we get for $96,000? How should that be spent? There's some incongruent dialogue about, well, just fix up the bathrooms, but remembering that fixing up the bathrooms means that you're not elevating to FEMA requirements, it's still going to be in the flood zone. Is that what the commission wants to do? So important discussions to be had. And then, small but not two things. Part of this project is to fix the boat ramp. Really important to our community. So let's get some more information about the boat ramp. What's it going to take to fix the boat ramp? I think that's very important and shouldn't be left, should be equally as important, if not more so, than the building itself, I would say. And the drainage pipe, I've communicated with Pam about the drainage pipe. I see that as a maintenance issue. There's no reason why that necessarily has to wait to be fixed as part of this project. I think it should, get some attention, and if it can be addressed before we do any work, great. If not, then, see where we go. And last, but certainly most important, as we did with Highland Farm, once we have all the answers to these questions, and once you have made a determination of your commitment as a commission to this project, we need to have public information meetings. We need to bring our experts in, have storyboards, let the public come, let the public ask questions of our experts. That's the right process. So I encourage that. And then, to the folks here, my ask of you is that you allow the process to take its place. We're barely just beginning what I think is the right process for a town project. So I encourage you to stay engaged, absolutely, but please allow this project to take the course that it should. And I certainly encourage members of the building committee to allow it also to take its course and see where we end up, because it is you, after all, it is the community that will make the decision in the end if this is a viable project or if it isn't, it's something you want to support. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just have a question.
Yes.
You talked about going back to the police commission about what is being asked here.
Yep.
So as a commission, should we vote on whether we would accept this as part of the charge or not? I'm trying to figure out, which comes first, the egg or the chicken, Because do we need to approve this, what is going on with the, their proposal for Pear Tree? Or should we wait for the commission to come back to us and say they're on board?
I would think the right process, and I don't know when the commission would be in position to discuss and add their support or modify what you're asking for, but I would think the right process would be allow the police commission to discuss it and to move it forward to you, and then you guys decide if you want to include it in your charge or not. I think that's the right process.
It sounds like it. I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify, because when we were doing, I see that it's on our agenda to take action on it, and what you're telling us is, right, but it's not right on our
Yeah.
agenda. So, it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to work on some of these things that you've put forth for us, which is great. Thanks, James.
Do you know the scheduling? I know they had a preliminary discussion today.
Well, we can put it on the police commission agenda for their next meeting. I can speak for the police commission in the fact that they're in support of the Marine Division having space at the beach, and that whatever avenue is pursued, that, again, that we think we're coming in with a reasonable ask and a defendable ask, and that we're not stamping our feet saying, this has to go our way, but we're coming in with a reasonable request, and they're supportive of that. And I think they would, at our next meeting, if they want to draft something from the police commission echoing that, I think that they can and will.
I guess the challenge for us would be trying to figure out some of this, working out some of the details of what the charge is that you've asked us to do, and also working with Neil Hawk, like making sure that we're kind of moving along. Because this is a big change that we're thinking about, maybe a little bit. I don't know. Mike might be a good answer.
Well, I think it's a good point you're making, and I guess my kind of observation on it is that I think what Jamie's pointing out is that where the building committee is today, well, let me rephrase it, kind of the process of getting to where we are today has been kind of, required a lot of deliberation, I'll put it that way. It's been kind of intense, and maybe some of that intensity and the amount of discussion that's taken place is because there has been kind of the charge and the commission's objectives have been a little out of sync. And it's left a bit, quite a lot, I would say, up to the interpretation of the building committee. So unlike EdSpecs, I think is a great example where there's not a lot of interpretation. And once again, I go back and I just reflect on, my binge watching of the DPW garage building committee activities. There's a case where Ed Gentile knows exactly what he needs to do his job, and if he doesn't get it, he can't do his job. So there wasn't a lot of, to the extent there was deliberation there, and the members, a member on the building committee that was on that building committee, it probably wasn't about, there wasn't a lot of stuff that was open to interpretation, I would say. So here, it's different, and I think the guidance I think I'm hearing from Jamie is there's no better time than the present to go back and at least have the discussion and explicitly synchronize the two things. So I don't think it's difficult, because I think we're simply synchronizing based upon what we have today, I guess is the simplest way to say it. So as an example, we went through an exercise back in July where the commission voted on things like decks around the gazebo. That emerged out of that kind of interpretational process that took place, at the building committee level. And we came back and asked you guys, do you want this? So it was a bit kind of in the opposite direction of, I think, the way ideally it should work. So I think Jamie's guidance to us is, okay, you've got that now, just go back and make sure the commission's on board with that, because the commission has to support that. So I think the exercise is more about just kind of taking an inventory of where the building committee is right now, kind of reflecting that back, and we can maybe do that at our next meeting if that makes sense, reflecting that back to the commission and just saying, okay, here's the way, here's a suggestion how to synchronize those things. Are we in agreement on that? Because I think it's a problem that they're out of sync, and I think we didn't really realize the extent to which that was going to create some discord until we kind of went down the path. So I think, I don't know, Jamie, if you feel as though I've kind of captured your thinking on that accurately. But.
Yeah, I think it's a fair time to evaluate the decisions you've made to date, to get everything lined up. And it's also a fair time for you as a commission to make different decisions, if that's what you want to do at this point in time.
Yeah, so that would be my suggestion, if that makes sense, in order to just, we can prep that and come back at the next commission meeting and kind of try to nail that down. And it sounds as though that might line up nicely with getting feedback back from the police commission as well. And, I think that would work out.
So we do the police action on the police request that meeting too in December?
Right, and by then we would have heard from the commission.
Okay, excellent.
I think maybe just one other observation is another thing happening here that I think is a good thing. Maybe inadvertently it's kind of happening, and that is, I think, there's been a kind of perception on the part of the community that, we're trying to rush through this thing as a way of just getting it kind of the goal line. And I mean, the reality of it, we just finished our 1-year anniversary, so it's hard to imagine how anybody could think we're rushing anything when we spent a year on it. But I think this is a nice moment, I think, to kind of step back a little bit, or just take stock of the various boxes that we need to check, make sure we've got, the information out to the public that, it needs to have to feel as though it fully understands what we're up to here. And, so this window is kind of, I think, allowing for a lot of that to come together. I think this is just one aspect of it. So I think that's, from my perspective, I guess, sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you're just thinking you gotta kind of keep moving forward, but there are moments where it makes sense to just kind of take stock of things and take a bit of time. So if we're talking about a month to do that, I think that's a time well spent.
A month to do all the.
Well, I'm
research,
thinking,
right?
well, I guess what I was thinking is if we're kind of targeting having this for the next commission meeting, it's a month out, so it's,
We have to be mindful too that by next month we have to have the budget buttoned up, so.
it's up to you guys. I mean, I'm not,
That's
once again, I'm not suggesting a timeline here. I'm
We
just.
have a lot of balls in the air,
Yeah.
so.
But it's just basically going back and, like you're saying, reaffirming all the decisions we've made about the building, right? Like, Mike, you're just gonna help us, line that up again and.
Well, I think, we've had these
Each
kind of checkpoints as we've gone along, right? So we did come back in July, as we talked about, as Jamie referenced, and, we've had Neil back at our last meeting. So I think it's just in kind of in that spirit of bringing the work back to the commission for review, and I think we're just defining this review as being a bit different than what's taken place up until now, which is kind of, once again, because we really didn't go back and look explicitly at the charge, right? We've been bringing back progress, but I think it's a good point to go back and, once again, synchronize the charge. And if that charge needs to be written, I think Jamie's suggesting there's an opportunity to do that, or update it.
Okay.
Which I think
Ultimately,
is
doesn't the
it.
charge come from the selectmen, Jamie?
It does, but the commission,
That's what I was referring to, by the way, asking the selectmen to update that charge.
the commission gives us specific input, and that's what we use to craft the charge. And that's the guiding principles for the building committee work.
Maybe what makes some sense is we haven't done a formal presentation to the Board of Selectmen up until now. We've been providing updates, but maybe in the context of what we're talking, this exercise of kind of boxing things in, maybe an aspect of that would be to go back to the Board of Selectmen and just kind of present the findings and the current status. It may be a nice time to do that as well, so let's leave that out there.
Thank you, Mike. Sounds like you're gonna be doing the lion's share of that, sorry. I mean, basically, because you were gonna,
Right, but I think Jamie's point to us is there's a point at which, and we really do mobilize, we need to mobilize so there'll be a certain level of work that's going to be kind of flowing into the commission in terms of advocating or just communicating or explaining and educating.
and that it's clear.
You'll have to let the committee know what you need from us, to do that effectively.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could take on things like Sarah, you need to do the concession stand and the food truck options and, Pam and I would talk about public town information meetings and how to set that up and, I'm just trying to delegate more and assign people to certain things for research. It'd be really helpful. Yeah, so maybe after the meeting.
Right, and the website that I
Yeah.
sent you guys is, I think you'll find that really, really valuable.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
That's good too.
Good plan. Everybody set? Okay.
Public comment?
Public comment, gentlemen, please, stay.
Actually, you answered my question in your discussion.
Do you want to ask it? Well,
Well,
I'm sorry.
my question was
I'm sorry.
really around what was sort of the impetus for the whole project to begin with? Was it to, buff out the bathrooms again, do some of the concession stand, help the police officers, Marine Division? I mean, what sort of sparked the whole project to begin with? Because, you bring out some solutions. I mean, I know it's a small space over at the boat club. I mean, it's a nice facility over there. Maybe we can, refurbish another area over there. I mean, the idea.
I'm sorry, can I stop you for one second? I apologize. I kind of kicked off another part of our agenda without I took some liberty to do that. No, we're gonna come back to you, but
Well
we just kind of, give us 1 second here, so my apologies.
No, I was just asking if the chief and captain are able to stay for the public comment session.
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, then we will move into that. I'm sorry?
Do you want me to pass around a sign-up sheet?
I
or
think
no?
people can just come up.
Okay.
If you're gonna speak, I just need their name.
Yeah, Jeannie, your name and address, and I'd like to limit to 2 minutes because we do have other agenda items this evening.
Hi.
We need to get through.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Nancy Stein. I just wanted to say thank you again. I know, sure.
Nancy, I'm just gonna
appreciate-
raise my hand when it's 2 minutes, okay?
That's okay. Can it start now?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for all the work that you've been doing on this. Jamie, I appreciate you hitting a restart button on this. I don't think it's a hostile environment at all. I feel like we are just airing our opinions and we're grateful. Sometimes it's hard in the 2-minute window, but thank you. In what I guess I'm asking is if we are hitting a restart, is for a year we've been asking if we could do some type of rendering with the existing structure. I know that the FEMA regulations have us cutting a chunk of our bathroom off, and as part of the original charge, the bathroom was a pretty important component of residents. But we've already discussed that in all the meetings. I wanted to thank you also, the officers. The residents appreciate all that you do. From what you said tonight, I certainly agree that there should be a police presence down at the beach. I'm not a boater, but you see the number of boats down there. I know that right now you have space at the boathouse. I know in a meeting of the Pear Tree Building Committee, I believe it was July 10th, Tom Bell had actually said that it was great having the police down there close to where the marine boats were. And so my thought is that if you do need a new structure, perhaps we can redo your area in the boat club, or perhaps have an area where, like the entrance hut, I don't know how much space you need, but maybe a portable entrance hut if you're going to be down there for 3 months. An entrance hut where it's just yours and it's easily accessible and noticeable for people who need your services down there. It seems odd to me to put it up in a 2-story structure where there might be a room that's a flexible community space where people are playing bridge or hanging out, to have a police presence up there, especially if you're bringing in people that have issues or had issues. I think that all I ask is that maybe we think about different ways of having a police presence down there. Certainly it's needed, we appreciate it. I do think that maybe there's like a portable something. If it's just a 3-month period, maybe there's like a portable unit that you have, or, like a hut or something like that. Thank you.
I'm Diane Conalog, and I'm the 2018-2019 Vice Chairman of the RTM Parks and Recreation Committee. I'm going to share with you tonight this committee's comments regarding the Pear Tree Point Beach Improvement Plan. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on October 29th, 2019, with 9 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum. The purpose of the meeting was to assess where the committee stands on the major components of the Pear Tree Point Beach Improvements Plan. More than 2/3 of the committee present felt they could not support the current plan for the buildings, which include building an elevated structure. Those members felt the renovation budget should be used to rehabilitate the bathrooms, and the remaining money used to rehabilitate the concession building to the extent the funds available allowed. It was suggested further renovation of the concession building could occur in 3 years. I think that's something that wasn't talked about, that you could get more money in 3 years and could do further work then. Building the concession upstairs was voiced as a safety concern for children. The elevator was thought to be too expensive because of maintenance costs from the effects of sand and salt water. In summary, keeping a concession service a grade would be preferable to building an elevated structure. All members supported the boat ramp being fixed and understand that will include dredging, though there is no budget yet for the dredging. Expansion of the beach was discussed. Replacement of trees on the south beach as soon as possible was supported. Plans for plantings to hold the sand in place in the expanded West Beach area was accepted, but many thought expanding the South Beach by 5 feet was not necessary, and if eliminated could save parking space. Many members thought the loss of 31 parking spaces would negatively affect the boat club. I'm giving a report for a committee.
I'll be happy to give her my 2 minutes. Betty Hartmeyer, 6 Harriet Lane. I'll give her my 2 minutes.
Thank you. A significant number of the members thought they could not support the decking around the gazebo as it is currently planned. They did support handicapped accessibility of the gazebo. As minimal ramping as possible was suggested. And finally, the handicap access to the picnic area was supported, only if it did not overwhelm the picnic area. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a copy.
Anybody else?
My name is Bill Van Loan. I'm an RTM member on the Park and Rec Committee. I have a question to ask all of you. Do any of you know James Resnick? He's the manager of the Tokenique Club. Tokenique Club has an elevator. The elevator is in the same proximity to the beach and the water as what is being proposed here. During high tides, storms, the Tokenique Club had to spend $30,000 at one time to repair the damage to the elevator. On another occasion, they had to spend $70,000. This elevator is a nightmare for the Tokenique Club, financially speaking and mechanically speaking. What you're proposing to have children, handicapped people going in and out, using an elevator, tracking sand in and out of an elevator, it will, in my opinion, continually have maintenance problems and functional problems. I spent 36 years in New York City as a property manager and real estate broker, managing old buildings, many of them with elevators. They're very temperamental, and I don't think it's a very practical solution for this under the FEMA regulations. Thank you.
My name is Scott Reardon. I'll give the reporter whatever else you need to know. I live here in Darien. One of my questions is directed really to the police department to get an understanding as to, is your need driven by sort of access and policing of the beach per se, or is it more the boating and the marina and maybe and the marine needs, not marina but marine, and maybe if you could enlighten us about what facilities you might have at Weed Beach that might be a reflection of, what your focus is in regard to sort of beach and marine, to sort of separate those two out. And then the other thing that I think would be helpful for the Parks and Rec and the public as it relates to this Pear Tree Point Beach question is to get an idea as to actually how much use the facilities, the sort of two closet facilities or whatever you call them, they're actually sort of getting the day. I don't know whether it's sort of a daily use or it's sporadic and it might be 2 days a week and then it's silent, or if somebody's in there for 10 minutes, and those kinds of things could edify. And I'm not suggesting you answer right now, not in my 2 minutes, if you don't mind. So the other question I think that I think of is that I hear the first selectman's comment about a reset and sort of a need to collaborate. At the same time, I think what's going on here, from my far vantage point, far times and up close at other times, is that there's a need to go back and anchor what the Parks and Recreation Commission is doing to what the public wants. What does the public want? What are the programs that drive it? In the same way as it was articulated with the Department of Education, there was a level of specificity there that was quite helpful. And the other thing I'd mention is one of the parks, there's a program in regard to Nature Conservancy and other stuff, and I thought that was interesting. They did so well at that because it's driven by the programs, either Parks and Recs or the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Bridget Whitney, 31 Beach Drive. I thought I would get up here today. As many of you in this room know me, I've worked in the Darien schools as a substitute teacher for over 10 years. And so it's not uncommon for me to be down at that beach and have kids up on my towel talking to me. I know their families. Last summer, there was a little girl who I've known since she was in ELP, who was at a birthday party down there, and she was up on a lifeguard chair. She's special needs. Nobody was paying attention. I got up, went over to her, and I said, come on, you know me, let's back down from this chair. One of my chief concerns about this two-story structure is the safety. The parents aren't go down there any Friday night. Parents are having a nice time. Those kids are all over the place. They're allowed to enjoy that beach because it's a safe place. So I just want to read to you tonight a letter from a client of mine who's very opposed to this, and I see them down there regularly. She grew up in town, and she says,
Bridget, I'm sorry. I think if we're reading letters from others,
it's just short.
I just think we need a name.
Oh, okay. Her name's Georgia Solomon. Okay. She says, my family and I have often enjoyed Pear Tree Beach, and the proposed changes have us concerned. One of the biggest draws to Pear Tree is that it's practically untouched, a real gem. There are no structures obstructing the view or playgrounds to draw the kids away from nature. This beach nurtures the curiosities of our children, promoting imagery, play, and a first-hand interactive look at the beauty of the earth that surrounds us. My children have spent hours flipping stones, looking for crabs, and walking up and down the beach with their friends playing games they just made up, digging in the sand, and using only items from the beach to decorate their masterpieces. Pear Tree is a place we retreat to where we are allowed to relax with family and friends, enjoying what we bring and the company of the community and environment around us. We love that it is a back-to-the-basics part of our town where nothing needs to be fancy. Simply back into a space, open your trunk, and you are there, at the beach, ready for fun. Just sit and watch the memories be made. In these uncertain times we live in, we should be teaching our children to appreciate what they have, not showing them how to build over it. I find it extremely upsetting to think that the charm, simplicity, and easy access of Pear Tree Point is in jeopardy. We are extremely lucky to live in this beautiful town with plenty to offer, and if one should want more from a beach, there is always the option of Weed Beach, where rental space, playgrounds, larger picnic areas, and sports courts are readily available. I am not naive to see that Pear Tree could benefit from improvements to the restrooms that currently exist. I believe updating that area would be the best use of taxpayer dollars. I truly do not see how spending to build an elevated structure in a flood zone that requires children and the elderly to use stairs, elevator access amenities can be the best plan for our community. Our concerns go past just the build. What about the yearly maintenance of this proposed project? 2 minutes.
Those costs are sure to burden taxpayers to keep this proposed space in good condition. Surely there are other options that will not drastically change the way this recreation space works for our town or create such an expense now and in the future for the residents of Darien. Regards. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Rob Kominsk. I'm the newly elected Commodore at the Boat Club, and just wanted to offer a couple thoughts from different points that we've heard. We're a club that's been in service for about 70 years, 700 resident families. The core mission of the club is to get residents of Darien onto the Sound. Just wanted to, our stance as a board as it relates to this project has been, you guys are yard membership, you're residents first, club members second. If you have your own opinion, we haven't taken an active stance one way or another. So that's our general view on the project. Although there's one thing that we do like, particularly, is the ramp. I personally blew out some brakes on my tires trying to pull a boat out some years ago. So that doing work against that sounds like it'll be well enjoyed by the community. Just a couple other points to clarify quickly. We have had a long-standing relationship with the Marine Division. We love having them at the Boat Club. They've been an integral part of our membership community. We were very happy when, after Sandy, and there was not space to carve out some space, even though it's not optimal, to be utilized as they needed. And I would say that we've never internally spoke about anything where we do not see them at the Boat Club. I think that was something that was in the letter. I wanted to just clarify that was not. That's nothing that we would ever consider. And then lastly, the building itself is not really zoned for office space. We call it a closet. And so that's really not, I know some people have mentioned this is a place where we could do incremental changes and build a bigger office. It's really not that kind of a structure. So we don't think that would likely be approved as such. So just wanted to clarify those few points. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm coming from a different angle altogether tonight. Cheryl Russell. A couple of months ago, you had a gentleman here discussing the 2020 celebration. And he had asked or talked to you about the strip of land that's approximately 3 car lengths, I guess, long by Pear Tree Road and Long Neck Road. And no one seemed to know where it came from or what it was about. So I found out that it was I've known, but it's been a donation from Helen, I believe you pronounce her name, Helen Rivoire, back in 1982. And she gave this, she was a Ziegler, either a Ziegler sister-in-law or sister or something to the Ziegler family. And she donated this land to the town for passive recreation and a fishing area. So with that, I'd like to say that I think it would be a great idea for Park and Rec to take this over. I'm sure the RTM, Park and Rec Committee, and Take It to the RTM would love to make a dedicated land. I'd like to see it cleaned up a little bit so the kids can get out there and fish better and the public can fish better. That's one thing. The second thing is the trees for Pear Tree Point Beach. A couple of years ago, they were going to be donated to us by the tree conservators. I am willing to take this job on to see if we could get them planted as soon as possible. Because right now we're on kind of sort of hold. This has been going on for a while that we've wanted new trees down there. And I'd like to take that off Pam's plate and your plate, Lori. I'd be willing to call them. I'd be willing to see if they're willing to still donate the trees, work with them, and get them planted either now or in the spring. And it's budget time. So in your budget this year, I would like you to have, well, I've just got 2 seconds more. I would like you to please put in for a drinking fountain at Pear Tree Point Beach. The drinking fountain was destroyed, broken, something happened to it. It was never fixed or replaced all last summer. In 95-degree heat, children were trying to fill their water bottles, and parents, in the shower stall. I think that's totally disrespectful to the townspeople in this town. So I would like you to put that into the building, into your budget for this year, because we don't know if we're going to get a shovel in the ground for next summer. So I do think it's going to be a good idea to have a drinking fountain down there. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Anybody else? All at once? We will close public comment. With our agenda.
We got one.
Oh, we have one more?
One more. Can you hear me okay? My name is Andy Millar. I'm an RTM member from District 4. I'd like to point out that I'm an elected official of this town, and as such, I'm responsible to the voters, not to other politicians. I also point out that District 4 does not include Pear Tree Beach, but the voters have just re-elected me a couple of weeks ago in significant numbers to do my best to preserve Pear Tree Beach. So frankly, I was very relieved to hear what the First Selectman had to say tonight and ask us to perhaps reconsider or look broader at this project that has generated so much public opposition. Honestly, when I came here this evening and when I saw this letter, I viewed it as a very transparent attempt to rescue a very unpopular two-story building against the wishes of my voters. So I hope that that would be reconsidered based on the First Selectman's requests. In fact, the voters have asked me to do what I can to support renovating the existing buildings and the picnic area, retaining the current number of parking spaces and not reducing the number, improving the launch ramp. The launch ramp is of great importance to my voters, and replacing the missing trees along the waterfront. I hope you will listen to the voters also. And to those of you who voted for me, I thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else?
Angelo Marisciulo. What the gentleman just spoke of, I hope is correct. I hope the selectmen didn't come here and give you the idea that you should circle the wagons and support what the committee has come up with so far. I think from what I've read over the last few months, there is a large section of Darien that does not want this project to go forward as planned. And I hope you will start from the very beginning and re-look at everything and not just circle the wagons to push the present project forward. I don't think that these people who have come and spoken are wrong in their approach. From what I've read, it just kept on going, this, that, and no answers were given. I'd like it to be transparent going forward, and I'd like people all throughout this town to be heard. I hope that will happen. Thank you.
You set? Okay, we're gonna close public comment. Okay, thank you all for coming out. We're gonna move on to item on our agenda.
We always like to hear that.
No,
I'd ask everybody, please. Excuse me, everybody, we're still in our meeting.
You need a name and an address.
Yep, that's proper.
You want my alias?
Okay.
Let me get an additional.
So much. Okay, we're going to go on to a debrief of the parks tour, which really, we don't need to spend a lot of time on. Excuse me, folks, we're having a meeting going on. Out or sit? So, I thought we could have a brief debrief of the tour, which also would help us just really launch into the budget discussion, because I think the two of them really, can't shut both doors, but we can ask them to be quiet.
Well, maybe we open this door and close that door. Can we do that?
Yes, so there'd be more crowd.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
So, it's really noisy that way.
Well, they're both noisy.
I'd rather have.
We have to keep it open.
No, I'd rather have the back one.
Sorry, we have to keep it open. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah.
Lori, we can reverse it if you
I find it extremely distracting.
Have you read this one? Yeah, we just, it was louder back there, but it's pretty clear now. I'll open this one.
Yeah.
Hey, could y'all mind moving to the front, if that's okay? Please, keep one of
Okay. I hope everybody enjoyed the park tour.
It was very nice.
It was really nice. Nice morning. It was really good to get out, see the facilities, walk around, get a perspective. You know, I reflected on it. You know, after I got home that day, about how within a half an hour of each other, we were kind of deep in the woods, and then, you know, feet in the sand, so to speak, you know, half an hour later, and it really, you know, just highlighted to me the diversity of the facilities that we have and the beautiful parks we have. So it was a nice morning out. I hope we can make it an annual tradition, and I would like to follow up on the offer I made to Jim Flynn that we would have one of our meetings maybe, in January or February, move them over to the garage and have part of our meeting, because he really does want to show us the equipment and
Boys and their toys.
yeah, boys and their toys, and really tell us about the work that they do. You know, he was very proud. He told me during the tour that he's very proud of the fact that they really don't send out any of the maintenance work. That
saves a lot of money.
The
And you'll
staff,
see that reflected in the
yeah,
budget.
the staff is able to. They have
That's amazing.
the skills to really take care of all the maintenance themselves. I know he's anxious to show that off to us, so we will definitely get that scheduled. I think that would be nice to do.
Lori, can we also schedule perhaps sometime in the spring to finish the rest of the
I
parks?
think that would be a great idea. Yeah. Yeah.
For that meeting to be conducted in the spring, is that what you said?
No, to just.
No, separately, see if we can do another park
That's a
tour
great
in
idea.
spring,
remaining
we'll fill
parks.
in with the rest of the parks that we missed, because we, you
Yeah.
know, in the amount of time. I think that was enough time, I think,
Oops, sorry.
to try to get in any more would have been too much.
No, I think you did a great job.
So I think we'll do that. So, you know, I don't know if you want to highlight, or whether we just want to pick out a few things that were sort of the highlights that we need to be thinking about in terms of prioritizing the budget. Is a way to go on this?
The one thing that seemed to be repeated was the whole concept of maintenance right across the board. Do we put that into the budget as an increase, or how do we handle that?
I think that because we had that discussion, I think we should carry on in this fiscal, and for the next fiscal year with Jim, so we can actually look at the numbers, because right now the numbers, the historical numbers, play the role in how we continue. Now, Jim didn't state that he had any major maintenance issues right now. So we're up a park crew now. So he's feeling actually that he's got his full crew back in order to do the maintenance that he needs. So I feel that he's got a handle on it right now, with the crew being where he wants it, and our 3 seasonal that we have come in for the summer that really help out during the period of time.
But we saw things like the gazebo at Cherry Lawn, which really looks not good.
terrible.
It looks
I think he's
terrible.
gonna get to that, though. He's gonna get to
Weed
that.
Beach, you know, those, they look almost like ventilation panels within the door are very rusty. You know, Cheryl's talking to us about a broken water fountain. So it's really the things
But I think
where
a
we
list of things, I think a
want
list
to
of
be
things that he's given for that, I think he'll accomplish that under the
Oh, good.
maintenance that we have.
So that's not like a capital thing?
No.
It's just more like a long list of
What about the-
honey-do list.
What about the roof though? If we have to, we need to replace that roof.
Right, that's gonna have to get an estimate on that.
Right, so that's not a,
That's
that's
something they
maintenance
can
though.
do.
No, I don't think so.
What is cedar? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
It was-
I think that's gotta be
What's
costed
cedar?
out.
Cedar's-
So that's
But I don't
gonna
know
be
if
a
it's a bidding
capital.
job. I don't know if that's, I would think it would be an under $10,000 job. I'm not an expert on it.
It's a small roof, it might
It
be.
is small.
It might, but I
If you
don't
could do
know.
it.
I don't feel like anything.
We just took one off.
But we could, this is the time, if we wanted to add some money to the capital improvement plan for that roof. And then in the meantime, I have 4 weeks to button it up
Right.
to get a number.
I mean, that, I think of all the things that we saw was the most glaring.
Yeah, that was, the
I have a-
gazebo was the most glaring.
I have a different question on the topic though,
Yes.
and that is, I think you're touching on it, like, Pam, would you expect the commission to give you that list, or can we, because I'd like to ask, I'd like to expect that your guys would be bringing that list back to the commission and
Right.
saying, here's, based upon our evaluation, here's 10 things that we would like to do.
We are.
So, yeah, so, okay, so that's, so
I did not put
I'm
it
just
on there,
checking.
but I do think it's a very good point, that we could add that on.
Yeah, I mean, we can all walk around and give you feedback, but I think
Right.
what we're, I think
Yes.
one of the things,
Yeah.
I guess my observation was that maybe a bit more kind of a proactive, and it may be that your guys haven't felt like they're kind of licensed to add stuff to the list because of budget constraints, but I think if we can,
No, Jim is very active in this.
okay,
Jim and I sat down together with
good.
this.
great.
So I know
Jim
about.
Conlon or Jim?
Jim Flynn.
Yeah.
Because Jim
And
Flynn,
maybe not only at budget time, by the way,
Yeah.
you know, through the year, like, once again, we've heard about the fountain's been kind of, you
Yeah.
know,
well, I think that
Toilets at
the
the
fountain
pantry.
issue was also about the fact that they had put some money into that. It kept being problematic, and we had this project going on too. So they were fixing it, and then it was being very problematic.
But I guess all I'm suggesting here is, you know, rather than just doing it only once during budget time, maybe make it a regular item that you bring back to the commission and say, you know, our guys have identified these 3 things, or those 2 things, or this one thing.
Because we do have conversations throughout the year about things like that, and I keep a notebook, that's a month by month.
Yeah.
So if there's something comes to my attention, I'll flip 6 months ahead
Yeah.
and put it on there.
But it would be helpful, I think, I think it would be helpful in terms
To
of my
report
role.
here.
Yeah, to just understand what you guys are doing in terms of
I
kind of
think
things that
that's-
are kind of out of the norm.
Yes, and typically, I do have a park area in my report.
You do?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, Jim gives me a park inventory kind of list each month of the things that they've accomplished.
Yep.
So I get those every month in order to put those in my report.
Okay.
So.
I just had a question about the basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked about just putting up the nets and just seeing where that takes us. Have people been asking about the nets in the basketball court? They've been complaining about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have been complaining
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The surface
for a
is
long time.
uneven, and that's why it was taken down.
Yeah, it's very unsafe.
That's
It's
why
very
they're
unsafe.
Yeah. It's
And it's been offline longer than this commission has wanted it to be, but unfortunately, the way that it kind of was handled was that we then went into the park master plan.
To
Rather
wait to see where
than
we
taking
put
the
it.
money that we were given, actually the money for the basketball court, and we opted to step back and say, maybe the first thing we should be doing is our plan.
That's why.
And so that's why we did that.
because we locating it, relocating it, there were all these other options that we
Right.
weren't sure about.
And then we had it in our budget last year and it got cut out. So,
Yeah.
does everybody need a capital sheet?
Yeah.
Oh, you need one.
And this is actually updated with the reflection of the painting.
What was in the budget for last year? What, for, with respect to the basketball court? Was it just to resurface it in its current location, or was it to relocate it?
$80,000 to relocate.
To relocate it to where?
Well, the park master plan has it behind the cluster of tennis courts, in the flat area
Yeah.
behind there.
There's
That's
a
where-
lot of different things. That's part of the reason we need to make a decision on where we want to put it, because we're not going to invest money in the existing location if we do decide to move it. And we don't have the bandwidth to work on Perry Lawn.
I would just leave it where it is.
The current location doesn't give you a full court either.
It's not a perfect world.
No. But
And I hate the idea of taking away from any green space at that park.
Yeah.
And I think there are other people who feel similarly who are not here. But we're not voting on it tonight or anything, but
No,
I
we're
think
not.
in terms of a priority, I mean, it looks terrible.
Well, I can tell you
just
right now,
areas.
the town is also looking for, we've had numerous requests about a pickleball court. Now, in that corner, I could see that being dedicated. It's the size of possibly, I have to. do
You mean
some
the basketball court?
The current one
Yeah,
that's
in
taken
fact,
off.
Jamie actually
That's a
emailed us this
possibility,
week
right.
asking us to have the commission consider
A pickleball court?
a
Pickleball court.
dedicated.
We either can take away one of the current courts, which I'm not certain that will be very favorable, because right now we're sharing them with the possibility of doing either pickleball or tennis. But we certainly could take the freestanding one that's there and make that pickleball, or consider taking that space that's up there where the old basketball court was and utilizing that as a standalone pickleball court.
Big enough?
I would have to check that out. I couldn't tell you.
Pickleball court is smaller than a tennis court?
But I could not tell you that right now.
Does it have to be a certain surface? I guess. you
Yeah,
guys-
it's like half the size of it.
Half the size, it's half the size.
I
in
think
theory,
so, not a pickleball player, but.
Right, but it's smaller, and
Yeah.
certainly the court that we're talking about that was taken offline is not a standard basketball court. And this town, just, in my opinion, I think this town deserves to have one court that's standard basketball size court. This isn't a really athletic town. And, our parks are lacking that.
It's all indoor now,
you know.
basically, and
that-
and that's something to consider, because I know that it's taking off in the winter for these kids that do the leagues, do the YMCA, and they don't have a place to play outside, which, is important too. I don't think they get to play year-round either, because of the basketball is always in the winter indoor and not necessarily outdoors, so we don't have anything outdoor for them.
I'm not sure that I follow, and I apologize, I zoned out looking at something else. Maybe you guys touched on this, but the reluctance to just renovate that the existing spaces, just either a non-regulation size court or just a half court, like I don't.
Yeah, personally, I think the town deserves to have a full court basketball.
There may be so, and maybe that's somewhere else, but.
For this particular space.
No, it's not, I'm not suggesting it as an either or. Like, why not just go ahead, it's been historically a basketball court, why don't we just go ahead and renovate it? And then if we have space and we can figure something out for a full court somewhere else at some other point in time, because we're holding up kind of doing anything with that.
I think it's not ideal with that huge tree that's there. That tree would have to come down. It's butted up against a forest area or whatever. I guess we could put a fence there, and
Maybe just maybe some screening or something.
I would say for tonight, we're talking about whether we want to prioritize a court in the budget. I don't want to get too far off track.
Agreed.
Okay.
On
Yes.
the pros and cons of a full versus a current. I would
So we
just-
still at the
No, but that's true, but I guess what I remember last year, my first year on the commission, Lori,
Yes.
that's all true, but I remember that like a similar discussion as we were going through this last budget cycle, and another year's passed, and the town, I agree with you, it would be great to have an outdoor court, but it's one more year that we don't have one. And I don't know if there's a proposal on the table to build a full court somewhere else, so that suggests there'll be another year that we won't have something. So I'm just asking, like, why?
Unless,
why-
of course, this gets through.
In both our concepts, right, A and B, that were part of the master plan, there is a new basketball court right by the existing tennis courts. None of them actually specify keeping the old one, just as an FYI. You know, it's just for everybody to know. And that, you know, they did put in the plan to research and figure out what else fits there, and that's, you know, I'm not saying I'm just saying that's what.
I mean, from my experience from having a middle school age son, they don't play full court. They just want to play around the
Pickup games
nets.
are typically half court.
So they're, you know, they're just, all they need is a half court, and I think having having the half court is better than having no court, which is where we've been.
Right, and then waiting on.
But how much would the
But I think what I'm
cost?
suggesting is that the purpose of tonight is to help, and we're not voting on the capital budget tonight, but we're having the discussion around it. Pam will be coming back next month for a final vote.
Yeah.
I think what the guiding Pam tonight is whether we want to prioritize the construction of a court.
Yes.
And then if we do that and it goes through all of the budget hurdles, which means going, you know, through the selectmen's budget and the Board of Finance and all the way through, then we would have the conversation about
what form it would be.
So I just don't want to take us too far off track this evening in the interest of.
Right. The $90,000 you have here now, is that for a brand new court?
Say again?
The one that you have in the budget now?
Yes.
It's for a brand new court?
Yes.
It's not to renovate these?
And would renovating it, I would assume, would be a lot less. All we would be doing is resurfacing and putting some new mats in, right? And maybe some fencing.
The site works.
I would assume.
So the number's
yes.
gonna be lower.
I would assume it'd be less.
So the 90,000 would be for a new court,
brand
citing
new
a new
court.
full-size court.
Yes.
Can you also check on what the size of a pickleball court is?
Yes.
That's
easy.
Yeah, find that out, and then.
And then, where are we, just in terms of priorities? I mean, we have the basketball court here as a number one priority.
That's our discussion for tonight.
Right, but where, the gazebo, where would that fall? Because do we think that that's gonna be a maintenance, or, because I think that needs to be high up on the list. Are you gonna be able to
add it?
We
Right,
have
first
to add
thing,
this?
have to
Okay.
add it.
I just wanna make sure that we're thinking about that and where it needs to go.
It's your copy, sorry.
Just so I can mark it.
Okay.
So we want to add.
The two, just real quick, I wanted to go back to the tour real quick, because I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing. So the two things that came out at me, just in terms of clarifying some questions, I guess Tier asked about why we had a guard at Weed Beach longer than Pear Tree. And the reason we've done that historically is because we do a lot of drop-off programs for kids at Weed Beach, like the tennis programs, and we didn't feel safe allowing people to come in and out without some sort of management if the kids go into the bathroom. And, you know, there's just that supervision involved. And because we've had instances at the beach, I don't know, Pam, remember, where people were taking pictures of kids. I mean, random things were happening, and we got very nervous. So we said it was better to have that space monitored, especially if we're doing a Parks and Rec sponsored program. We wouldn't want the safety of these kids, you know, compromised. If, you know, like if, you know, you have the instructors, but, you know.
But the guard is in the guard shack.
Right.
Super far away from the bathroom.
Yeah, but if he would be able to keep people that weren't, you know, residents, or at least people with permits to come in.
But those people could also be people with permits.
In theory, I get it,
Right,
I get it, but it's just
know
another
how to-
adult on premise that would be in theory. That's always
Yeah.
I'm just not saying that it's the right thing, I'm just saying that was the history behind why we kept the guard at Weed Beach longer than Pear Tree.
Because of activities.
Because of that, because of the Parks and Rec sponsored activity, because at Pear Tree, you don't have classes that go on there. You know, we basically, it's, you know, you have parents that, you know, you heard, that bring their kids and they enjoy the space. Well, when you have like a tennis program at the beach, parents typically, I mean, I don't know if your kids are old enough, you drop them off and you go do your errand, you come back and get your kid.
Right.
And if a kid
Yeah, I
needs-
just don't
It's just
necessarily
another-
about the guard having a role in that. It would be more like the teachers.
And he does roll around. I mean,
You
a
know.
lot of times, like that guard that we talk about there, you know, they're there checking passes, but there are times when they're like doing a quick round around the parking lot. At least that's what I'm understanding. I got, no, well, at least in the past. That's what I was
in the
told.
past, but they, if
That
anything,
they
the only
do.
time they leave at this that I'm aware of is when they have to go to the bathroom. They don't do
Because, like,
any
whenever I
guard
used to talk
checks.
to the guard, they'd say, oh yeah, we just did a sweep, we just wanted to make sure everybody had their permits, you know, things like that, like random things they would say they did. I don't know, maybe they
Maybe
were
they did that in the
overdoing,
past.
maybe they were doing more than they, you know, were contracted to do, but that was my
I
understanding.
have a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
Susan, what you're describing, is it at the end of the season, that's why they stay longer?
Yeah.
Or at the beginning of the season?
End of the season, when, you know, like,
Because
you
I-
know, pear trees peeled off.
Yeah, I think the one thing we discussed, maybe just to add some more color, is, I think if I got it right, like the guards that we have the guards at Wheat Beach earlier in the season than at Pear Tree.
Right.
So the suggestion there was, and there was no clear understanding as to why they're there earlier by a month, I guess, more than a month and a half potentially, right? So,
Jeannie, you might be able to answer that.
but let me just finish my point and then we can try to get an answer. So the one suggestion was, unless there's a good reason to have them there earlier, just synchronize the start times around Memorial Day and take the money that we're saving by not having the guard at Wheat Beach earlier and just use that to keep the guard at Pear Tree longer.
That's what we discussed, yeah.
So that was, because I think the question came up in the context of us not having the guard at Pear Tree long, well, both, I think Peter raised it from one perspective and then the other perspective was
Let me tell you one, I know one.
not having them at Pear Tree a
One
little longer.
fact behind getting them there earlier was that we don't know if it's gonna be the same company, and they all have to be trained or retrained, even if it's the same company, it could be different staff. So now it's learning the routine, learning the credit card sales, the machine, the software. So I know that they do come in early for that too. Jim spends a lot of time training. So, and they all train there, even the guards that are gonna be at Pear Tree are training at Wheat Beach.
Yeah, like
That's part of it.
I mean, it's easy for me to give a lot of suggestions here, so I'm gonna just throw another one. But if it's a matter of having somebody come in for 2 days and do a training session, that's different than having somebody there for, I don't know how many weeks earlier.
Right.
It's like 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not sure that we need to train people for 6 weeks, unless they want to be trained and not get paid.
Right, well,
Train well.
can you speak to that, Jeannie?
Yeah, I mean, we have so much more activity at Wheat Beach than we do at Pear Tree.
Yeah.
So it's not only our programs, it's adult programs, it's youth programs, we have the playground.
Yeah.
We have tons of events, parties and picnics. So we're kind of enforcing our rules and stickers and there's a little more law and order, having a guard and checking for beach stickers and such. Pear Tree has much less organized, you know, there's a little less organized. You know, we don't have a playground there. We don't have the tennis courts or paddle courts. So there is a lot of organized activities.
Yeah.
At Wheat Beach.
I appreciate that. I would just propose, we can vote on it at some point if you'd like, if you need guidance from, but I would just propose, unless there's a good reason why we've got these guys there much earlier at Wheat Beach, I mean, we've got questions on both ends, I think. You know, we should contemplate starting at Wheat Beach, unless, to your point, Jeannie, we have programs like between April and Memorial Day, and that's the reason why we're kind of getting them out there earlier. But otherwise, I think they should be, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, and we don't have a good explanation for it, so I would just suggest starting at the same time.
I think classes, don't they start in April?
Well, but do people need beach permits, and do we need a guard for people who are going to classes?
No, we just like, you know, kept up, just, you know, just to keep, again, you know, because we started our class schedule. I thought it was tennis starts pretty early. I thought
Oh, yeah,
that's
we have a
what-
lot of.
Yeah, and that's part of the
Classes
reason.
all spring.
Yeah,
And certainly, I think, you know, I'll get an explanation from Jim Codlin as
Yeah, I
well.
think if you could just.
Just to see it his perspective,
Sure.
as he's been here almost 20
Yeah.
years, as much as Jeannie has. Not that
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
don't value your
Yeah.
opinion.
By the way, I'm not
but-
suggesting it's a challenge. I think
I
we had questions come up on two sides. One was
Right.
the question raised, can we have, you know, the guard sticking around a Pear Tree a little longer?
Yeah.
Because there is a kind of a summer beach season after the
Yeah.
guard leaves, so that would be one thing. And then can we, and to Tier's point about having, you know, being
Yeah,
able to-
I was coming at it from, you know, hearing from the community that Pear Tree is this quiet, quaint beach, and so it makes sense to me to have a guard longer at Pear Tree and shorter at Wheat Beach when a ton of kids and families are home from the summer and back and school is in session and people can come in and out to Wheat Beach and use the playground and use the facilities there, so.
But why would a guard hinder that?
Because, so I mean, just like personally, I have a ton of friends from out of town that can't even drive in. And so, you know, there's just like, it's, you know, it's, it's just an active place for, you know, not just Darien.
But then you'd
So-
hear the other argument, at Pear Tree, the reason they want the gardens is they're so out of town and aren't coming in.
And yes, but I agree with that. So then, right, because that's what I'm hearing, is like Pear Tree is this like smaller town, you know, a very intimate beach, and so it just makes, I mean, to me, it just makes sense to have the guard longer there and shorter at Wee Beach.
Look, if you
But
if you could just help us
like,
understand
yeah,
it.
okay.
I
Sure.
mean,
I think
I
that's-
understand.
It's just interesting that I just wanted to give you that That was just perspective. what I was coming from.
Well, it's kind of educational for us, because like,
No.
just understanding.
Right,
that.
yeah, no, it helps to.
I hear the reasoning.
Yes.
Yes, totally.
Um,
Okay, so any other points from the tour?
Just you asked about the light craft, what defines a light craft, and I remember as a commission, we said basically anything that's not motorized, like it could be a sailboat, a kayak, those type of things. What we did run into trouble with the light craft thing was that people with jet skis were coming through and trying to back their cars in and, you know, zooming, and that was what we were seeing.
So I think.
So anything that really can't go on the boat ramp at Pear Tree was
I think as we
coming.
update the rules, we need to
Yeah,
clarify
clarify.
that, and also the signage would need to be clarified down there, to make it clear to everybody
Excellent.
what's intended by light craft, because just looking at it, I'm like, well, I.
Yeah, I
don't
know.
what-
It's like, makes
what
no
does that
sense.
mean? I
Yeah, I
don't know
know.
what that means. I mean, somebody could say, gee, I've got a 17-foot powerboat, that's a light craft. I mean,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
seriously, somebody could say.
No, I get it.
No.
Madam Chair, can we move on to the budget?
Yep, okay, so any other questions about the, or debriefs or items coming out of the tour that we want to make sure get incorporated into the budget discussion? Since like the gazebo and.
What's the playground equipment?
Okay, so we'll move into budget, so Pam, why don't you just go line by line, I think we just go line by line.
You want to start with capital?
Yes.
Okay.
Capital?
All right, so valve replacement on town hall fields, that's needed, that's through the park system with Jim Flynn, $11,000. Concession equipment at Weed Beach. This is basically a figure that I do need to tighten up, but I did get this estimate through the website NRPA through a concession search. And this is an opportunity to free our hands from having to only have one concessionaire at Weed Beach.
Who brings his own equipment in?
Who has his own equipment there. And we've been talking about this for quite a long time. And it is an opportunity to
So
be
you only
able
need
to go out to bid.
$20,000 for
Yeah, because we own the hood.
which is a huge
You know,
cost.
so again, I'll tighten up this number, but I did get this number off of the NRPA concession search
Okay.
of a town, outside of Connecticut that has put in equipment, standard equipment
Right.
for their concession at 20, because you need,
A griddle,
a freezer,
a deep fryer.
a refrigerator, and, yeah. So I'll tighten it up, but I don't think.
Seems really low, that's why. It's super low.
Well, depending on what tier
It's a-
I come up with.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because whatever we're going
What's
to
the
do in
need?
there,
What's
yeah,
the
what's
need?
the need and
Yeah, that would be
what can
great.
change.
But they could be different, they could be very different.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they could,
Yes.
they
It
could be
could.
very different.
Or if we had the same.
Yeah, I think it's a great first step. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Thanks.
And I don't know whether it's worth, maybe not, because we're asking the current concessionaire if he, because we want to go out to buy our equipment and own our equipment, is it worth buying his?
Is he looking to get out? I'm
No.
sorry, I don't know
No.
the background.
No.
So this is
No,
just so
this
that we
is-
can bid it out every time?
Right, because
I'm hearing it.
it's very difficult to bid this out.
Can I
because
make a suggestion?
Anybody that wants to bid the job has to come in with a $15,000, $20,000 investment.
I think we understand the line item, and I think, we're trusting that you're gonna go off and try to figure out how to do that
Okay,
offline. How's that?
that sounds good.
Rather than discussing it here.
Okay.
No, but the discussion is, does the commission support asking for that capital request to take ownership of the commitment?
Yes.
To give
Yes.
us the flexibility
Yes.
to look at various options for concession providers. That really is what the question gets down to, Mike.
Yeah,
We
I
say,
think-
no, we got a guy, he's got to be put
I
in.
think we said
let's keep
yes.
going. Okay, well, I wasn't clear, we said yes.
No, I think on this sentence we said yes anyway.
We're like, okay,
Yes.
Susan?
So when we own the equipment, do we bid it out for a couple of years? Like, how does it work with other?
I would just suggest that's another
That's
question.
another, yeah, let's.
No, I just wasn't sure, like, if it's worth it to buy it. That's my question. That's the reason I'm asking is whether it's worth it for us to then buy it. If, like, I'm just trying to figure out if we keep what's there, like the way we have it, or we buy it and then we have to use
Actually, I
it
think
after
maybe
2
you're
years.
touching on something important here,
Yeah.
if I can try
Go ahead.
to interpret. And that is maybe in the same way that we've got Sarah and Tia kind of doing the plan for Pear Tree, I think maybe you've got to come back to the commission with a proposal for how you want to manage the concession at Weed
Right.
before we can determine whether we're approving money for this. I think that might be
Yeah,
a better
very good
order.
point.
Yeah, no, and that's what we
Yeah.
have to figure out.
Yeah.
And,
Maybe the
you
better
know,
order.
it's another layer of, you know, something that you have to think about, you know, because every year, you know, I know that we've had the concession for many years, it's easy to just be like, he's doing it again, and so is this something you're gonna have to revisit every few years? Is it, you know?
Well, we've also we just ran into some pretty big issues.
I know, yeah.
So
Yeah, I
I,
heard.
I get it. So it sounds like it's a priority. Okay.
Yes.
I have a question about timing. Like if we were to ask Pam to just come back to the commission with a proposal for how to manage the concession at Weed Beach, and that can happen in a different timeline than the
Right.
concession at Pear Tree. At our next meeting, does that still work in terms of the budget cycle? I'm not entirely clear like the budget cycle here and when things need to be nailed down.
well, they need to, I'm supposed to submit my budget December 15th, but obviously our meeting's a few days after that, so obviously there's some flexibility there with the administration. But I have my sit-down budget with Kate, Jamie, and finance director in January. So this is when, you know, and again, will there be some slight wiggle room even around that time? Yes, but
So
it's
can we
getting
ask
close.
you, is that fair to ask you then to come back to us with just a little bit of an outline of a proposal as to what it means to bid it out, what it means
Sure.
to manage it, and maybe you may even collect some additional information about cost or something?
Sure. Yes.
And just there's one person's suggestion, but Lori, I don't know if you feel that makes sense, or?
No, that we definitely need to do work around it.
Okay.
But I think we have to run almost a parallel path and determine as a commission, is this something we feel is a priority to effectively?
Yeah, I guess what the
take
question I was
ownership
asking
of?
is, can we just defer this one line item until Pam comes back to us? Because I think maybe.
Well, we're not
there's-
voting on anything tonight.
But I thought you were asking us for our opinions. So my opinion is to defer it until we get more information at our next
To
meeting.
not keep it on the list at all?
No, just, if we're not voting, we could basically, I guess what I'm withholding my yes vote until I get more information. And if I don't get more information, I'll probably continue to withhold my yes vote, I guess. is
But
what
we're
I'm
not
doing.
voting.
No, I understand
Okay,
that,
okay.
but, yeah.
All right, I will come back with more information. Equipment replacement program, the 55,000 is for the final dump truck on our fleet. That is the oldest, and it needs, it would be the final one to replace at this time. So that's gonna be a request.
So that's number one.
And, yeah, I kind of did, Jen said you can have 2 1s and 2 priority 2s, and mine kind of go Parkside 1, 2, 3 and Rec-side 1, 2, 3.
And the 45 for last year, so we replaced the truck last year?
Yes.
That's the adopted number, got it.
And then we have where am I? The updated playground equipment with 15,000 straight across the board, which I think this was a new addition the last couple of years. Maybe last year was the first time it was put in. And it's been a really nice addition to have, although it's another thing to do, and it's, but I think that instead of having a complete redo of playgrounds, which is very, very expensive, this gives us an alternative to update new pieces, like we did at Cherry Lawn with the larger one. So that's manageable at $15,000 too, and we can jump around from McGuan to Baker to Cherry to Wheat Beach. $5,000 is the tree replacement program. Now this one I put at 4 only because that was also established while I've been here. Because we do so much tree work in town of removing trees. But we really haven't used this account as of yet, although there has been I believe Diller actually right now. Because they're doing the Diller project, there's been some tree removal there that I'm thinking that actually this account is going to be very helpful. And then, of course, when we're talking about, pear tree, and we're talking about Tilly, we had some trees taken down there that we can actually replenish, so I think that's worthy of keeping in there.
Right, I think.
Although I put it at 4.
I think it's a great idea because I'm actually friends with the person that runs the Tree Conservancy. And right now, they're not actively fundraising, so they do not have anything to donate.
Oh, interesting.
I actually texted her after I watched Cheryl's meeting when they mentioned the Tree Conservancy. My friend is the president of that. And right now, they're not actively doing any fundraising, so they don't have any funds to buy trees to donate, just to give you that feedback. I mean, I'll give you her name and number, you can reach out to her. But right now, they have nothing, at that point, they did have a bunch, and I think we spread them around, and we told them to hold on prayer tree because of the plan. So they put, I think, all those trees at Weed Beach, I want to say. They planted a bunch there, I think.
They
or
did
different
the
places.
year, yeah.
They kind of spread it around where we could have used them. So right now, they don't have active any funding for it. But, so this fund might be important for maybe getting some stuff back in quickly.
Basketball court?
Thank you.
No problem.
So then we're at the basketball court. Yes, we did. Weed Beach Tennis Court repainting, that's got put in, if everybody has an updated capital. Jim has said that the courts at Weed Beach.
They look pretty sad.
Right, that
Those
there's some
pictures and
chipping, and, yep, so
We've
there
never
should have
had
been
them like that.
repainted 5 years, we're on the 6th year, which now will bring us into the 7th year. So
We've never had them look like that recently, honestly. I mean, there was some bubbling, but the pictures you showed me, I mean, that you sent to us, they look pretty rough.
Yeah.
And they're just gonna get worse with the winter.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of priority, that's what the commission has to decide as well, because will they still be playable in a year if we need to put them on the priority list for next year? Yes. But if we want to keep them in, we keep them in this year instead of priority 2. So I put them as a 3.
So that was 3 after Jim sent you the pictures, or?
Yeah, because they weren't even in the budget at that time.
Okay.
So my priorities were already there. So again, I'm looking for guidance with the commission as well to work on priorities of what we were looking for.
But you said we can have multiple ones, for instance.
You don't always get all of it.
Right. So ultimately, the administration is going to cut them out.
I know, but it also,
But it does,
Yeah,
It
does.
really comes down to a philosophical issue of the commission, is that what do we want our parks to be? Do we want them to show well and be well maintained, or are we willing to accept having facilities that look tired and run down?
I agree.
It's really
I agree.
a philosophical question.
Especially the
And that
things we
brings us-
already have,
Right.
it's like one
And
thing.
it actually brings us right
That's why
back to
that
pear
basketball
tree.
court is
I mean, really, we
unacceptable.
don't want to have something that looks that way.
We get
So-
it,
Tired and run down,
I
so.
didn't go into the bathrooms at Cherry Lawn. I saw they're not on here as a priority, but are they, what would the issue be there? Are they just in bad shape?
Cherry Lawn?
Yeah, it has Cherry Lawn bathhouse on here.
Right, well, a lot of these figures
Down
that
the
you
road,
see
though.
pushed out, when I first started here, this list wasn't created by me, so some of
Right.
these is
I just
actually,
was curious, because I
we
didn't
keep
poke
pushing
in
them
there.
back. We
We
keep
do.
pushing them back.
We
So-
just keep on kicking the can down.
So they're still doing okay,
Yeah.
and they're,
It's
so
not
it's a
terrible.
6-year plan, and, yeah, so they're.
It's not like as bad as the tennis courts that were painted to be on.
Right,
Is what you're saying.
exactly.
Okay.
And
curious.
then the stand-up blower for park crew, we just invested in one of them, and with all the projects that are in the pipeline, in terms of, Highland that we have to manage, Pear Tree possibly being improved, Weed Beach Meadow and Trail project, this is to create efficient work, and they can do work quicker. The stand-up blower that they have right now is phenomenal, from what I understand, and they will be able to use it in, not only in leaf cleanup, but possibly in snow cleanup.
Yeah.
So that's really So I really encourage Jim to go for another one this way. More efficient. And so that rounds out the, other than adding the gazebo roof.
The gazebo roof, right. What about at McGuan, you don't have it on here. Are we gonna try and just glue those tiles down?
Yeah, that was
I
on the list.
I pushed it out. It's McGuan playground surface, it's right here.
But in the interim, are we gonna just do something out of maintenance where we try and glue those things down? For the ones that are really egregious?
I felt that after our walkthrough, that the common feeling was that we could wait a little, give a little bit more time on that.
I thought we were all like, oh, well, we could wait a little bit in the context of, we could try and glue them down.
Like do some triage.
Yeah,
I can have,
on a few of them.
Yeah, I can have Jim do
On the
that
ones that are
trial
really,
basis.
you know, where like if
They're
somebody,
really
if it's
curling up.
ADA, you know,
It's
issue.
not ADA anymore, right?
And now, but to the extent we're gonna try and keep it that way, so if there's one that's really, you know, try and
Right.
pull the debris
Right.
out and glue those down so that if it was a wheelchair, the wheel
Right.
wouldn't get caught on it.
If that will work.
If that, but we
Right.
should
But we
try,
could try.
right?
Yeah, I can put that on Jim's list to try that.
And I think we were all supportive of that idea.
Right. Okay. So are we okay with that, or do you want to consider putting the playground surface back in 2021?
I have a different question. So just looking down the list here, we have Tilly Pond hut repairs. So I would consider the Tilly, just more of a question here in terms of prioritization. I mean, I think that Tilly Pond hut, I mean, I know we've had a lot of discussion about how iconic the gazebo at Pear Tree is. I mean, my feeling is that Tilly Pond hut is right up there in terms of it being an iconic structure for town.
We'd already agreed to add it, I think, right?
Oh, did we? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
It's there, but it's down the lane, down the road.
Right?
Not for this year.
No, it's down
gazebo.
22, 23.
Oh, for gazebo, I meant.
No, yeah, he's
I'm talking about the Tilly Pond hut.
Oh, Tilly
Stone
Pond.
hut.
I'm sorry, Cheryl. I'm
Yeah.
just
What
getting.
kind of work needs to be done? Like, is it a roof?
Wrong
Is it
part.
stone? I mean, what are you
Sorry,
looking at
Mike.
for that
No problem.
space?
We weren't looking at anything specific. This is one of those items that continues to get pushed. Now, we were all in the hut together with Jim Flynn, and nothing,
But
to my knowledge, not one particular thing came up
The
that.
notes I took, I mean, I was writing down
Yeah,
notes,
yeah.
as Jim said, the warming hut is in good condition. So
Yeah.
he didn't specify.
Well, is that there's like a metal gate that's there kind
Yeah.
of facing the water, which is kind of dilapidated? I think it just maybe like a cleanup. I don't know if it's like a power washing of the deck there or.
But isn't
Just
it
a-
just operating
Yeah,
as
that's-
opposed to capital?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Regular
Uh,
maintenance.
That's what that's the question I'm raising. I guess the question I'm raising here now, because we brought up maintenance, generally speaking, earlier too, is there, like, are we making those choices now, or can I make a request here that we do something with Tilly Pond in the next fiscal year, and if you can come back and let us know what you can do under maintenance, because that'll help me decide how I'm voting on this list then, because I might kind of move that up over something else.
Right.
Because once again, I think, you know, and we're having events there now, we're starting to have, well, we have a lot of events there.
I don't know that the work that you just talked about,
Needs to be on the capital list.
Right.
I don't think so
because I
either.
don't think it's the,
But once again, like
Has
that,
enough repairs,
like that
yeah.
little gate,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's some stone work or
Yeah.
repointing or things
Right.
that may also kind of minimize the amount of maintenance. Sometimes, you know, this stuff, you do a little every now and then, and it prevents kind of a much larger job, like stone repointing as an example, you know, down the road.
That was
So
really the last.
Jim will know that. and-
right.
And if it could be done on the maintenance, and we could just kind of spruce it up a little bit, I think, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I just hate the thought of like not doing anything with it for another couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like the sense of the meeting maybe, and this is something we can continue discussing, is it gets back to, you know, what do we as a commission feel is sort of like a baseline acceptable kind of level of maintenance for the facilities, and then we really need to talk about that and agree and give that direction to Pam and team that falls into the budget. And, you know, we as a group say that, you know, we have beautiful parks, you know, and we want them to look good. We don't want to go and see, you know, rust on the doors, and we don't want to see a gate that's broken, and then what does it take to maintain to that level? And if ultimately you and Jim say it takes
you know, another half a body or this or whatever. I mean, I think those are the things we really need to be talking about, not is it just good enough, and really what is it we as a commission philosophically feel we want the parks to look like.
Yeah.
You know, when we
That's
do our
true.
walk-arounds, and that's really what it comes down to.
Mhm.
And some of that
That's the right way to
is
look at it.
capital, but a lot of this is just ongoing operating
Maintenance.
maintenance. You know, and do we have the resources to maintain the facilities to the level that we believe they should be maintained?
I will come back with a list of all those small additional things, like the painting of the each doors at the concession, fixing the screens, fixing the gate there.
Power washing
And-
the gazebo.
Right, so
Yeah.
Jim and I will work together to produce that list, and
great.
and I'll bring it to you in December.
Because I think those little things, they add up.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's
You
your
go down the
perception.
weed and there's like a slat on the fence that's like down. It may
Yeah.
just, it looks bad, you know?
Agreed.
And the basketball court is cherry lawn.
I don't
I'm
want to
really
speak for
upset about
everybody,
that. Like, I haven't been there in a while.
but do we have consensus about that? I mean, I know I'm particular, and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that catch my eye.
Oh, I think it's
Catches
horrible.
everybody's eye.
I mean, you can't talk about doing anything new if we can't maintain what we have.
Right.
You
I think
know?
that's the right way to put it,
Yes.
yeah. Because it just adds to the maintenance burden
Yes.
if you're adding more and more new stuff there. It's just
We
additional
just
stuff
need
that
to
you gotta
have, like,
maintain.
I think the standard, our standard, we just need to, if
And
we're
I-
all on the same page.
Yeah, and I believe that with a solid list, that with the crew that he has, we have one of the best crews, I think, that they've had in Darien for a very long time. And I think with a very healthy, good list, that he can chop through that.
Okay,
I
that
think-
would be great, but.
I think I'm speaking for him, but I feel pretty darn confident he would agree with me.
I just don't think any of us want to pull into any one of these parks and see these glaring
No.
maintenance issues.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
just, it's, you know, that's not what Darien is.
Right,
So,
right, I agree with you. Shall we move on to budget? Are we good?
I think we're good.
Copies?
Yes.
You said you brought a fresh one, right?
Yes. I'm gonna bring this way. instead of there. Yeah, I prefer you to look at this one because while using the software that we're using, there are a few budget numbers that didn't carry over.
One more short.
Does anybody have an extra one? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, just before we move off capital, based upon these bottom line numbers here, this is showing the difference between what was approved in 2019 versus what we're asking for, right? That's the right way to look at it.
Yeah. And I try to balance those numbers because you're really you know something's gonna go.
Sorry, guys.
So I really had the course at one point pushed out to 21, 22, where Jim felt strongly it should
It might be helpful to show, I mean, we're showing a 6-year view outwards. It might be helpful to show a 6-year view or 5-year view backwards.
Very interesting, yeah.
Just to
It's
show what
very,
we spent on
I
the
probably
budget.
have it here, but.
Hey.
But I can tell you that every year, maybe we're lucky we get one or two things. Usually it's a piece of equipment like a truck and then one little thing. We don't get much. We haven't had stuff in so long, I can't even tell
I mean,
you.
we shouldn't ask.
I know, we keep on asking, I'm just, I'll put it out there, but that's typically what we get.
Well, but I think there is a point at which you see the deterioration, like if you're not paying attention to stuff, it
Oh, but
deteriorates.
that's maintenance, which is not a capital problem in theory, right?
Well, maybe like a roof on a gazebo is a capital thing, once again,
Or someone might say we could have been power washing and taken care of it and put preservative on it and taken care of it. I'm just putting that out.
No, it's a good point you're making.
Because the cedar roof lasts for a long time.
But I think that goes to Lori's point now, which
Right.
is,
So.
how are we approaching these things now? And I think
Right.
there should be a healthy dose of maintenance every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the definition of maintenance maybe just needs to be clarified.
Yes.
Maybe what
We've
we've
been
been calling
trying-
maintenance is, less than what we now view maintenance to be.
We have been not only shorthanded,
Yeah.
but down at crewman for a couple of years,
Mm.
but we also didn't have the skill set of the crew that we have today.
That's great.
So, big difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess there's one big explanation needed that looks glaring on the revenue side. That big change of 470,000.
Just a little bit.
And the simplest way that I can describe this is that, because I walked into this job, the way they were already running it, was that they had an account called a Contra account. And all the programs were run through the Contra account. So everything that was, all the revenue that went in and all the expenses that came out to pay all the instructors. And it was never in the budget. But what made it to the budget was the money that was given back to the town.
Right.
Which was the net. So moving forward with this new OpenGov and being even more transparent so that these numbers are out there, they are now in our budget. So that's why you see the revised budget of $655,000. And the proposal of the net would be $185,000. So we're still going on the upswing because we're offering more things. And
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying kind of generically. I think it would be helpful now that the numbers are such a big number to understand a bit more in detail. So I don't know if we can get a breakout of like what's really in there and how the number was treated previously. Because like if somebody asked me, I don't know how I would explain what
it's
it
the
is.
gross of everything that we're running. And
What does that mean?
But you're saying the 655 for this year's revised budget, or the 2020?
2021 is the net.
And the 6.
So 2020 is this year.
Right.
So that's net.
Right.
And
This is
the other was
now.
gross.
Right.
Right.
So in other words, historically, for 18, 19, and 20, 18 and 19, those were the net numbers?
Those are what was, Jim would give back a certain amount of revenue to the finance department while keeping the contra account still with enough money to continue paying for the instructors and revenue. So he wouldn't deplete it.
No.
But he would give back, and I'm not even certain whatever their agreement was. I just knew when I came to town here that every once a spring and once in the fall that he would be giving money back to the town.
I think I get it, like generically, like the 655 is like an operating budget, and the 185 is the net.
Yes.
I think if we could just understand a bit more what's in that 655.
And maybe I'm not explaining it as...
No, I think you are, I think
But I just don't understand, if this is a new way of doing the accounting, why is it for 2021 dropping down? That's what-
Because the 655 is still that gross of the entire operating thing, and then this is what, after paying all the instructors and everything out the door, we're left with that as a net, just as we were down here, but no one ever saw that starting number.
The 655
Yeah.
you're saying?
Mm-hmm. And I will try to clarify better this time, if I'm not as clear.
So it's just if Jamie's running a program and she's collecting so much in fees, and then she's gotta pay for the instructor and pay for the supplies for the baking class, is the number after that? Okay.
Right, so instructors typically getting anywhere from 70 to 80% of whatever comes in.
So it's the net income on the program?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Exactly.
So moving...
It's just having the 655 in there is what makes this all look kind of
Right.
wonky. I don't understand why it's showing as our budget for this
I
year, but
know.
yet the budget for next year.
I can ask Jen for an
The budget
explanation
for this
on
year
that,
is the
but-
gross,
But I think that's when it
and
actually
the budget for
happened.
next year is the net.
So, yeah.
So it just looks
Yeah.
really.
And just a slight, an explanation on the loss of 10 and loss of 2. And that's simply, historical, looking across at the numbers. I kept keeping that $70,000 as a budget of revenue. We were, as to Mike's point, if we were to have gone back to 2017, 2016, you would see that we were up at 70. And so I was keeping that 70 and saying, well, maybe that was just a down year, and so we're gonna.
That way.
But I thought that perhaps a better number was to drop it to 60 and see where we fall out there. And same with the building rent. Jeannie and I are working really hard to keep the rentals up, which we're booming, we're busy. But typically, even with that small room, it's typically weekends. And so the reservations are high in terms of letting the Dairy Engineer Sailing use the building and meetings and some programs in there. But typically, a family in town that wants to use it for small gatherings, typically a Saturday and Sunday. So you only have a few of those a month.
Right.
But we're busy. So going into the budget, had I highlighted all yours, you could see the changes. But So, So I guess some of the highlights would be, like, for instance, we're saving so much on training services. And the reason we're saving money on training services is because with the lifeguards and all, there were a number of new ones this year that had to get certified. And so we spent more money in the budget certifying. Next year, we won't have to do that, so therefore it dropped a little bit. The increase in the seasonal and temporary salary, that's the waterfront coordinator. Jim really wanted to get that hourly salary increased, so that's the reason for the increase there. So going from 22 to 24, which is equal to surrounding towns to pay their waterfront coordinator that much. If we go down to the other seasonal and temporary salary, which is the savings of 22.78%, which is a nice savings. Basically, historically speaking, we're, I think, again, as efficient as our crew gets, the less hours that we're having to spend on the seasonal college kids. A lot of the college kids are coming in now at the end of May and working till the end of August, whereas we used to have seasonals from, say, April through October, so we're saving on the hours there. The 13.13% increase in overtime salary, sat down with Jim, discussed this, and in reality, we have board events now. We have a new hire, Jamie. She's got, her charge is to make sure we have some really terrific things for the public to do, but with that comes help. And so, we have our fireworks now that we took over, so our park crew's got to bring that out on the weekends, and they got to come back and they got to help clean it up, so there's a little bit more overtime help necessary for them. As well as Highland Farms, they find themselves having to do overtime hours just to cut the property. Now with a full-time crew, we're hoping to get that back on that a little bit.
But again, those are really expenses that are accruing to Parks and Rec that are supporting in some cases, non-parks, and not rec program. Like the fireworks is not really a Park and Rec program, it's a town program.
No, it's Park and Rec.
That's considered, well, we got it. Okay.
It's ours.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no longer the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. So it's ours.
Just remind me of the fiscal year again. Start of the fiscal year is when?
July
1st.
Okay.
Let's see what else. Maybe drop down to the printing, and that was an increase there of 8.28%, and that's strictly because of beach stickers. Were 8,500 we ordered and we sold out, so we're boosting that to 9,000.
So you're going to get more revenue for that in the future if you sell all of them, right? You're saying?
Oh, our revenue for beach stickers is.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's. So
It pays for it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
It's just-
it's not like a problem then.
No.
When you sell more stickers, you get more money.
Right. And if you drop down a little lower there, 42.86 is probably one of my biggest increases in an account, but that's strictly tree maintenance. And you can see the historic numbers there. 18,885, that was what we finished out last year, and 20,000 the year before. So boosting that up to 20 so that we won't find ourselves having to transfer at the end of the year because of tree work. Rather have a little bit more money left over rather than having to try to find it, especially if it's an emergency. Facility repair and maintenance, below that is an increase in 11.29%. My only explanation on that is that we, in 2018, found ourselves with a surplus. Not certain why, we got busy in certain things and we didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, but so Kate cut it and we were back in the flow of what we normally spend at 85,000, so I made sure to supplement that back up to 779.
What is that for?
Facility repair and maintenance?
Yeah, like, you mean like the building? I mean, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all our parks facility maintenance.
So some of the stuff we're talking about, you would be doing that under this, like buying materials for that?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get a little list for you.
Sorry, I don't mean to,
No,
it's very big, broad category.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
Breakout, yeah, that's, well, unfortunately, that was one of the accounts that, that we didn't have enough detail on, and I didn't bring my detail sheet with me, but it's anything from all the seed, it's got telecommunications, it's got a variety of things in that account, that, and it's also got the cleaning services for the entire town too.
Oh.
That comes out of that.
Okay.
Security?
The cleaning. The cleaning contract comes out of that.
Oh, it does?
Yep, and that's like $35,000 out of that.
Oh, so that is a big chunk.
Yeah. And the guards, I believe.
They have another line item or not? Security services on top, maybe? See where's
No,
security now?
you know what, I'm not quite sure right now where they may very well come out.
Because it's a big number, the security services, under training services. You see, it must be that. It's $52,000.
I'll get back to you on that.
What else would that be?
Because it has to be.
Oh, there's securities.
Yeah, it's right there,
separate
security
line.
services.
Yeah,
It's right there on
separate
top.
line.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah.
yep.
So that's why, you know, when you said this was 32, I figured that was a good number for security.
But it's everything, all the electrical, it's everything.
No, I just was trying to get
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get a
I have
big
a
list.
question.
Yeah.
So under just to make sure I'm interpreting things correctly, under program expenses, we've got year-to-date, it's 72.3. That's 4 months. So 72.3 divided by 4 is 18 a month. If you multiply that out times 12 to get a full year, that's 216, and this is saying 517.
Right, because that has to do with Jim's
The timing?
account. No, all those programs, if you see historically, it's 14,000, 16,000, right? Well, all Jim's programs now were put in the budget. So they weren't in the budget before, they were in that contra account. That's why that's so different.
Didn't exist in
It
the
didn't make-
spreadsheet.
Exactly right. It didn't
So we're putting it
exist.
back on the spreadsheet and making it real.
So, yeah, exactly right.
It was out there.
So
if I could just get, I would just
It was
like to
an
see what
alternate
the
reality.
detail is on the 517 and the 655, just to kind of reconcile those two numbers.
655, which one?
The
Well,
one
the
on top.
655 is in the
Oh,
right
up
column,
here,
yeah.
gotcha, yeah. Look at that.
So you're saying the difference between those two. So let's just see if that works. If I'm understanding, it's 655 minus 517 is 138. Is that,
138.
is that the way that's supposed to work?
I'm not certain, I will get an explanation from Jen. That's brand new. So, Jen and Jim.
Yeah, because then you think it would be high up here.
Right, it would be.
It's just
Yeah,
not,
it's not
it's
consistent.
not consistent.
No.
It's really confusing.
Okay.
We've
I'll get
lost
you the
something
detail.
there.
Yep. Okay, and then if you turn, let's see, at the bottom of the page, telecommunications increased slightly, and that's basically a couple few new phone plans have come in that were increased. I made it increase the account. And electricity, we had an increase there as well, and just historically speaking, I just made sure that we boosted that to 22.
Are any of these numbers seasonal, meaning like the first 4 months is not it's just not a straight run rate, like the first 4 months isn't indicative of what we would be spending like at other points of the year, if you follow my point? Like, is there a bump in expenses like at certain points of the year that, in other words, I
Utilities,
can't,
oh yeah, and utilities and such.
would, I would think. for
or
sure.
staffing as an example because of
Yeah.
programs or something
Yeah.
like that, you follow my point?
Well, even when you look at winter, if it's a slow winter, then you have very little overtime, but if it's a big winter, then our overtime is.
I think that would be helpful, just, and once again, part of, I think, the exercise is just understand how the numbers work. So I think if you can help us understand, like maybe even a little notation somewhere in here that indicates like, you know, peak period, you know, these 4 months, you know, we're spending X percent more or more than these months or so. Because I don't really know like what of these numbers are seasonal. I mean, probably guess at some of these things, like junior sailing is obviously seasonal, right?
So, clarify what you want.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, like, if I do what I just did, if I take the first 4 months and I divide that number by 4, that gets me a monthly number. In which of these cases is it not appropriate to just say, I'm spending that much every month? You follow my point? Like, if I take, I'll just give you an example, let's just take.
Give me one of the.
Yeah, I'm gonna
account-
do, let's
one of the
take
accounts.
security services.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just take security services. So that's 28, so that's roughly 7K a month. Am I right in thinking, like, we're spending $7,000 a month, or should I be thinking in the months of February, March, and April, we're spending zero?
Well, this particular one, security services, is definitely seasonal, so that's
But that's my example. I'm just trying to.
That's definitely a seasonal thing.
I mean, it would be helpful, honestly, if you, for these budget numbers, if you were actually able to break that out over 12 months. So you have, like month, and you could show us what you're anticipating spending in each of those months. That's not really, it's a budget exercise also. I mean,
Facility repair and maintenance is all over.
You follow what I'm asking?
You would just rather have a monthly and not assume.
I'm just trying to learn, like, based upon the numbers here, it's a learning exercise for me at the moment, which of these are.
Can I do that after the budget this year? Don't do the spreadsheet.
Well, it's just helpful to understand, like, what we're approving also, and it's a kind of it's a good challenge to you to help us understand, like, what these numbers are all about.
Yeah.
Are you okay with the example I just gave you, or you want more examples?
Okay, well, I'm mindful of the time too, so.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Me too. Okay, so.
I'm a little bit. I'm wondering if OpenGov can help out with that.
Okay.
Because OpenGov is available to all of you, and it breaks down all these accounts.
Oh.
And I will send you that information, because OpenGov will go into this thing and it will show you.
Do we have that already? Do we have
Yes.
access to that already?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's open to the public.
Yes, so you could go on to Park and Rec.
Oh, I
you
see.
could hit the button on that certain count, and it's gonna show you exactly what was spent.
Can you
And when.
send me a link to it?
Absolutely. It's actually on the website, on town website.
Okay.
Cool, so I think that's probably the answer, and that takes a lot of work off my.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And turn it around. And there's only 3 up top that are worth mentioning. Potable water. I want to tell you that I think when we had that whole water shortage thing where everything was turned off, the irrigation, all that, we're saving a lot of water. And I think we invested in a smart water management for our irrigation. And Jim's able to monitor how much water is being used. So I think we're seeing the savings in that as well. 6% change in sewer. It is what it is, watched historically, and I made sure we reflected the savings there. And portable toilet rental, we went up because we are putting Pear Tree online in the wintertime with a portable. Highlands coming online, and we expect to probably put a portable there, and that's that. So really, in the end, you're looking at just a 1.46 increase. So pretty darn good, I think. Especially with some of the big increases, we were able to balance with some of the savings on some of the other things. So. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll have some fine tuning for
Yes,
next month.
for the 517 and the 655.
And then next month we'll need to develop on the budget.
Yes.
And a better understanding about what you're thinking about the concession for
Yes.
Free Beach.
That's great. Yeah, I had it already. Long list.
In your spare time.
Not enough hours in the day. All right. And
Okay, so we're done with the budget discussion
Yes.
for tonight? Yes. Okay, let's see if we can get through the next. Okay, Pam, why don't you give us just quick updates on the 3?
Yep.
projects.
Diller Park is on its way right now. Currently, the contractor has started. Susan
Saw the
sent some
pictures?
great pictures
Yep.
today. Work being done. Sarah has been in touch with me with some concerns, some of the kids walking in the road because with the equipment that's been laid out there,
They've
it's
been parking
taken
in the
away.
parking lot too.
It's
Yeah.
taken
Oh,
away
yeah.
some of the.
And I go there every week, every day.
Yeah, no, me too. And the police aren't there, so.
Well, they did put a police officer there morning and afternoon,
Today
the
they
very
did.
first day.
I was there, I didn't
Today
see,
this
I was
morning I
there
saw
both, I was there this morning
Yeah.
and this afternoon.
I saw Mary this morning. I was there. I dropped off my son
I did.
at
I
7:15,
I was there at 7:25, there was somebody there.
I think.
Well, they don't have the staff to put there every single
No,
day,
no, I know.
but they have them there, and they want to come up with a solution to try to. They put cones out.
They did.
Susan
Yeah.
put pictures out. Yep. And
It's not ideal, but what can you do?
Is that a police for the construction? Is that-
Yeah, just to manage traffic because there's a lot of
The
cars that
kids.
come in and out.
And they don't have any sidewalk now.
Yeah, they're walking.
So the kids are walking in the street or getting off that portion of it and crossing the street.
Yep.
So We have let Don know, and they're gonna.
Keep an eye on it.
Yep.
I think they're getting towards the end.
And I have alerted
Project.
Darien Athletic Foundation about the same thing,
Yeah.
so hopefully the work goes quick.
I was confused by the one communication indicating that all of the parking spots had been moved to.
They had not been moved.
Okay, so that was incorrect.
One of the neighbors was concerned, reached out to me, I had him put it in writing for me, because he went across the street to talk to one of the workers. The worker said, no, we're moving the parking spots slightly over so that we can save this tree. That neighbor wasn't having it, because that's not the way the plans were approved. So I went back to Darien Athletic Foundation and they stuck to the plan. So the tree is going, and hence we have some tree funding in our budget, so that we can
The
plant another
communication
one.
seemed to say all 5 spaces were being moved, or 6, whatever it was. So
They
that's-
were moving them down to save this tree, but
All
that
of
didn't
the
happen.
spaces.
Apparently, apparently, but none of that happened anyway.
They were further up than
I don't think
they were gonna be.
the authority to do that, that was my concern.
Right. Highland Farms, they were ready to go. The RFP went out, a vendor, contractor was chosen, which is DJ Daring. But they were working on the agreement, the contract agreement. So Kate was hoping that construction would start, and that's the last I've known that she was hoping, but it was getting too late in the season. And so without confirming with her today, I did talk with DJ Deering too, because he's the one who's helping me with the check valve. And he said, still waiting on a contract. Agreement. So that's where we are with that.
They probably missed the window on the
I think so.
asphalt.
I think so.
I'm sorry, just back to Diller, what's the ETA?
Well, they're also working really diligently because of the asphalt companies. So they're working hard. They're under the gun.
Okay, but the intent is that that would be ready for the spring?
That's what the intent is. Yeah, but
And
their
they've made
their
good
hands are
progress,
tied to the
yeah.
asphalt companies that are gonna close down because of
The weather.
the weather.
They can't do anymore.
That's Diller you were just talking about. And Highland Deering, it's also blacktop. It's the parking,
Parking
that's
lots.
the scope of their work, is the parking lot.
Parking lot, pathway,
Ah.
and some minor regrading
Mhm.
of the property.
And the pathway will be what material?
It's not an asphalt, so it's not what we're planning for, say, like Wheat Beach, but it's
Crushed
crushed
stone.
stone. Okay. And Wheat Beach Meadow and Trail, we have hit a pause button on that because we are trying to tighten up the numbers. And the contractor who the Darien Athletic Foundation entrusts with the work has unfortunately had some family problems and a death in the family. And so that's put us at a halt in terms of really talking to them right now. And we're trying to give them their space, and Jen will hopefully connect with them in December, but it's certainly made us take a step backwards and say this most likely isn't going to happen for the celebration, which we were really trying to achieve. But that's okay, because what we really want is to have the project, get done. Whether it be June 2020 or fall 2020. So that's where we are right now. We're being patient. Although I am going to ZBA for the project, just concerning the wetlands with the plan. So there's a public hearing on December 4th in regards to that.
What date was that?
December 4th.
Thank you.
And for those of you that really, are supportive of the project, it would be nice to have some support.
Could you just
there.
send us a reminder?
Yes.
On email, please?
I'm sorry, Cheryl, what's your question?
What about EPC?
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay, that's what I
Sorry,
thought.
I misspoke.
Okay. EPC is December 4th.
Yes.
Do you have the time, if you want people to come? 7:30 or 8?
It's 7:30 or 8. I think it's 7:30.
7:30.
Yeah.
Okay,
7:30.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you anticipate like any issue or not really? Have you been hearing from?
The EPC, a few of the members on EPC, although it's not in their purview because they were there for the wetlands, but there were some concerns about the asphalt. and the thickness of the asphalt. And so Dan's pretty confident that he has enough good information to calm down any feelings of reservations on the environment with that. You know, here we have a huge parking lot filled with blacktop. You know, so this particular surface throughout the woods, he feels very confident that A, they're everywhere, and B, he just needs to explain it well. And he feels he can do that.
So I raised the question
Yes.
coming out of our tour, and I'm not sure how to proceed with it. And the question that I raised is, there's the stretch of the proposed path from the bathhouse essentially over to kind of like the new short lane end. So it's a run that runs along the beach side of the berms, I guess, or the dunes. And it just occurred to me as we were going through the tour that I just asked about the option of diverting that outwards from the beach to the parking lot side for that short run. And the reason for that is twofold. One is I'm not a big fan of giving up beach where we don't have to, and it seemed like one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, it seemed like today for beachgoers, I think it strikes me that that's kind of a peaceful spot of the beach where they can put their chairs up against the grass and the berms and the dunes and kind of enjoy the kind of looking out on the beach towards the beach with nothing behind them. And what we're now going to be doing is pushing them out by the width of the path, and also creating a condition where, you know, that kind of peaceful section of the beach goes away because now they're going to have pedestrians walking behind them. And it didn't seem like it would be all that kind of much of a deviation or kind of diminishing the effect of what we were trying to do with the pedestrian path. But it did seem like disproportionately a greater effect to people sitting on the beach. So the question I have is, like, what do we do about my request?
I've already spoke to Dan.
Okay.
But with, you know, ultimate respect to the foundations that I'm working with.
Yep.
That the design's been put on hold. We're still obviously working through the design phase anyhow.
Yeah.
They put a lot of work into that, and they'll have to put a lot of work into changing it. But regardless of that, he's willing to do that. But it's not changing it, it's about meeting with the foundations to make sure that everybody's on board with that as well.
Okay. So maybe you can just register the fact that at least one person on the commission has raised the question.
We'll be taking another look at that.
Yeah, and I'd like to understand, like, if they have an objection, what it is. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
You got it. And
if they just want clarity from me in terms of what the heck I'm talking about, rather than me just sitting here.
No. I understood it fully.
Okay, great.
Summary of correspondence, I did not do. I was, sorry.
Oh, okay, you didn't bring this
No,
spreadsheet?
because what I did, I ran out of time, and I was sending you all
Oh, yeah, I saw
the
the
correspondence.
comments. Yeah, we got
That's
it.
what I did, I ended up sending you that.
We got it all.
And, yeah.
I read it all.
Yeah, we read it.
And director's report.
Well, just maybe we just touch base on a few of those things. There were a couple, there was some correspondence about dogs. So that's an issue that continues to come up in terms of.
And that was a pretty, I feel, pretty serious one.
Yeah.
And the thread was long. There were many. Woodland. And so, you know, yes, we've understood for years now, understood that this is a problem that takes place there. But to actually read in detail that situation was, I thought, hard. But again.
And we witnessed this on our tour. I mean,
Yeah.
we all individually approached people while we were there with their dogs off a leash, so.
And so it's, you know, I gotta take that thread, I have to send it to Chip. That's number one, I haven't done that yet, but I will. But Chip needs to have it. I mean, he's our animal control officer. I'm not certain I have a secret antidote for how to solve that problem, but.
And we talked about it a little bit when we were on the park visit, but, and, you know, I don't know who I don't know that I want to be the point person on it, but that maybe we need to have public comment and come up with off-leash hours for the park. And then really enforce it.
The reason we didn't put off-leash hours there, though, Sarah, was because Woodland is a nature preserve, and as a result, we couldn't have dogs go off, in theory.
Yeah,
that's
but
what-
the fact of the
that-
matter
it
is
was-
it's a
it was
free-for-all.
created- It was created as a nature preserve and deeded to us as a nature preserve. So we couldn't change the use of that space. So as a result, we
I
said,
see.
because of the low-lying birds, all these, nature stuff, we said we could never, ever allow Woodland to be a off-leash space.
But it
because
is.
I know, I get it, no, I'm just saying.
So
because
what are we
our
gonna do?
our policy is always, so it's an enforcement issue, it's never been about, and it was an enforcement issue before we made the final, even kind of reiterated that.
And there is I believe, didn't the dog park make it in the plan, master park plan there? We certainly talked about a dog park in the back of Woodland.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the Friends of Woodland Park, which we're working on too, is, in favor of that now. Somehow has come to a conclusion that perhaps that would help change the dynamics that happen inside the park.
Well, let's not go too
Okay.
far. I just did want on the record that we had
So enforcement issues.
enforcement issues.
Can you
Yeah.
send your correspondence to the chairman of the Park and Rec Committee? So that
Do
we
you
know
copy it?
exactly what's
Yes,
going on in
send
the
it to,
parks too?
I believe, I usually send most of it. I don't know if I sent a correspondent, public one though. I'll send it. Okay.
And actually, the one site on Facebook, the Moms Group site, had a lot of people talking about Woodland Park, and I told them to call you. So that may be some of the correspondence,
Yeah.
because
It might have
I
been.
did hear back
Mhm.
from one of them that was a good plan, but there were a lot of other people who were adding into that, saying, that's why I never go there anymore.
Right, right. That was on that thread. Yep, I'll
I
send
told
them.
them to take a photo of the people.
True?
Yeah,
That's a good point.
citizens arrest.
All right, well, I just wanted to make sure we got that on the record. Okay, Pam, do you have anything else?
Well, in
We've read
lieu
your
of time,
report.
yeah, the report speaks for itself. And, other than Jamie's got her sports shop tree lighting coming up on December 1st, so that's something good. And we also have our old fashioned holiday, which is the second annual.
Looking forward to that.
Yes, it should be really nice on 12/14. Jeannie's been very active in helping with that. She's loving that. Of course,
Okay.
we would like to have hot toddies one day. That would be really nice.
Oh.
A hot toddy would just, kind of
You guys
wrap
bring
it
them
up.
out. Everybody can bring their own toddy.
Honestly, I was just happy with the donuts.
Easy please there.
Yeah.
Okay, so, ready, I do have a couple things, handful of things to cover in my report, so you do that, and then we do have to vote on a new business, we have to do new business to vote on the schedule, so,
Yes.
it's been an active month. Pam and I attended 2 planning and zoning meetings regarding the Nature Center's application for their special permit. Remember, we spent quite a bit of time on that at our last 2 meetings.
P&Z meetings?
Yeah, P&Z meetings, yes. The first meeting, they provided their proposal. There was a fair amount of questioning from the Planning and Zoning Commission, who certainly took, note of and kind of were querying why they didn't understand that they were operating outside of their permit, so that was discussed. They were asked to come back with some additional specific information regarding the number of programs and attendees. The follow-up discussion, they postponed or continued the discussion to another meeting, which was last night? I've been here 3 nights this week, so. Last night, and again, asked some more follow-up questions about the request is to allow them to have up to 5 events on property where basically they're renting the facility to a totally independent group. They've stated they don't really want to do a lot of that. They said it's not really on mission for them, that it kind of distracts the staff in preparing for those. But they wanted some flexibility to accommodate those, and the P&Z Commission seemed to be really wanting more detailed information about, like kind of a cap on the number of people that would attend those sort of things. So the public hearing portion of that was closed as of last night. They will go into their deliberations at a future meeting, and we will see where that comes out. We have gotten clarity regarding the parking, which I don't think we all fully understood the parking arrangement when we had our discussions, but they have effectively exclusive use of the parking spaces that are over by the nature center, so they can fill them and use them to need. As soon as they have any activities that exceed the number of parking that they can accommodate on their portion of the park, they actually need to apply to us for a parking permit, which Pam in the office can agree to or deny depending on the circumstances, and then they in fact do have to pay us. So
Is that for like an individual event?
Yep.
Not for a sustained period?
Either. Either. So for instance,
They have 25 spots.
when they were
They have.
using our overflow parking to park their staff this summer, which Pam realized that, then they effectively, you made them get a permit and they had to start paying us. But that had not been happening for a few years because we didn't know. So with regard to the parking, we do have an ability to control that through, and they now clearly understand that. So even if they rent their facility out to a third-party group that's gonna have, they think, 150 people, they need to come to us and say, our 25 spaces won't accommodate, and they need to rent additional space.
And Jeannie did give, and I sent you that email last night, but Jeannie did correspond with Leela so that they can appropriately budget for these fees that,
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we have that piece of it a little bit more buttoned up, and both parties are clearer now on what needs to happen, but the planning and so, they had a lot, the first meeting, we were there for
2 hours.
2 hours, yeah. It was on the nature center, it was very.
Crazy.
Yes, I'm sorry, Susan, and you were there as well. It was a
Oh my
very,
God.
very long meeting.
So long.
And they asked them a lot of very detailed questions on every single program and the number of attendees and et cetera. Last night was maybe, 20 minutes, half an hour, so not as long. So the P&Z is really digging into this and giving diligence.
That's a quick question.
Yep.
I promise it'll be quick. So where would those parking lot fees go in terms of the numbers, the budget numbers? And like what kind of, you may not have the answer now, I mean, you can get back to us, but I guess I would just have a question, like, where would that go? And based upon kind of like the history, what are we actually talking about in terms of revenue that would come from the?
Jeannie is the perfect person for this.
I mean, I don't
She
need- I
takes
mean-
all the.
No, it goes in the park facility permits.
Got it.
All the fees, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And we've been steadily.
Yeah, we've always done
increasing.
parking with the nature center there, but that's where I believe it's
Yeah,
that line,
looks like the big
right,
one.
for
Yeah.
park facility permit.
Did you, back to the P&Z, what did they think about the 2-year limit? That's my question, like, about.
They understand that is our
So are they gonna roll?
request.
So they don't, it's our request, it's
They
not.
understand it's our request. I don't have a sense. I mean, clearly last night, the nature center pushed back on that.
Okay, because I remember, like, Chairman Albani, he seemed to think that it's hard for them to then tie our hands, that another commission tying our hands of what we need to do going
Right.
forward as a commission in terms of Cherry Lawn, that he seemed a little nervous about that,
Right,
too.
right.
So just to give you guys a sense,
Mm.
it wasn't, I'm not sure which way he's gonna go, but he did consider it in making his permit.
And they made a case for it last night.
They made a
too,
case
that-
for it
That please
last
think of us during the deliberations. And clearly, I mean, this commission, as far as I can sense, is very supportive of everything the Nature Center does. It's just the fact of the matter that everyone's trying to do the right thing. And, I've made it clear to Leela, she's great about it, but I do still sense some, some hard feelings from their board. And they absolutely showed that last night. It's too bad, because certainly we want to be good neighbors, and I think we are good neighbors. So,
But we also don't want to hamper our ability to ever plan in Cherry Lawn.
Right.
If we have an
Right.
agreement
And
that
that's
is binding for us too, because it binds us to a certain amount. Because if it turns out the traffic study says we have to honor this agreement, then maybe we can't do other things that we need to do at that park.
I do want to speak quickly about the traffic study, because I
Okay,
did
but
tell
we
you.
have
I had talked to Jim
12
Flynn, and he honestly thinks we should take a breather, and this year, spend a little bit more time taking a look at it, because he's down there more than all of us, and he does not sense a problem.
At Cherry Lawn.
No, there are times when it's busier than other times, absolutely, and there's
He's not there on the weekends, though.
Yeah, it's true.
And I have
That's
a
true.
garden there, so
Yeah.
I've gardened there for 15 years.
It gets crazy.
You're right, for the
It's crazy
weekends,
on the
yeah.
weekends, yeah.
And at like 5 o'clock at soccer, pick up and drop
Right.
off in the weekday afternoons.
In his opinion, he doesn't think that
Yeah,
the exit
5 o'clock
out
is-
the other side
It's Armageddon.
would be worth it.
Armageddon, for sure.
So we'll have to, but I do think that at this point in the stage, we need to just keep, like, for instance, when you're there on the weekends, we need a little bit more data than just saying, oh my God, it's so busy, right? So now if you guys are there, great, jot it down, let us know exactly what you see, right? And so then we'll do more due diligence by doing drive-bys through the week.
Yeah, but Pam, I'll tell you, the few things I've been involved in town, you know, when parking comes up, we're always kind of basing our understanding on like this anecdotal information, and I think that becomes problematic. I mean, we're hearing words like, I know like it's like getting late, but we're hearing words like Armageddon. I mean, I responded to the fact that during, you know, the camp period of, you know, my understanding was traffic was running out into Brookside. So we're hearing a lot of anecdotal stuff that suggests that maybe it's time to do a more formal study rather than relying on people being there.
Yeah, not casual.
So I would.
Side with you.
Yeah, I'm just not sure why we, and look, I'm open, but I'm just not sure what the reluctance is, aside from cost.
Right.
If it's something,
Then-
if it's cost, let's figure out
Is
how to
that
find the
something
money.
we should be putting in our capital?
Well,
Is it capital?
I would say.
Maybe that is.
I'm in
I
favor.
would say doing it in the spring would be great.
It wouldn't be available.
How come? Oh,
Because
because
it's
it's our
fiscal.
budget.
It's next year's budget.
Or you can do it in the fall, it's the same,
You know.
it's the same thing, just as long as it's when soccer is in season.
Right.
Or commission one and have it done over the course of X months, where you do some targeting,
Yeah, I think that's
sampling at different times, because it
That's
sounds
better.
like
I think that's what we should put in our
the
budget.
activity is changing
Yeah.
from, you know, period to year to period to year.
Yep, I
So
think
that
you're
we
right.
know. we have
Thank you.
control over it.
Yeah,
No.
I agree with you.
So I think you need to get it in like September and October,
Yeah.
when, in the late afternoon, when the gardeners are there, the people at the playground are there, and the soccer people are there.
September, October.
Yeah.
But also,
And the nature
what
center.
about summertime?
Yeah, nature center period.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
July.
the soccer people aren't there, so then that's a whole different, I'm talking about like late afternoon, the usage of the park between, let's say, 3 and 5.
Yeah, but it would be good.
3 and 6.
But I think
Let's
with all
take
this
up
nature
and-
center
yeah,
too.
let's get- I know we gotta go. 5 items I have to.
Okay, go, go.
We keep, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
I know.
I've attended there's been 2 meetings of the Coastal Advisory Committee, and the first one, we had a representative from the Police Department Marine Unit, much of the information we heard tonight. Last night, no, that was Monday night, we had a representative of the Norotan Heights Marine Rescue Unit, who also gave similar information. They provide a lot of details about the types of events they responded to. At Monday's meeting, it kind of got into boater safety and specifically kayaker safety came up. And the specific ask that's been put forward of Parks and Rec is that, well, there's 2 pieces. One is that they are asking that when we issue the permits for people who use the kayak racks, I guess we give a sticker with a number. The police and marine unit would, and fire department marine would very much like those stickers to be larger, so that people's name and phone numbers can be on them. And they said the issue is that instances where boats get loose and they're floating, and they need to quickly be able to contact an owner and see if this is a loose boat or whether it's someone that is off of their vessel. And they can't do that easily with just a number and trying to track down who that unit belongs to. So they asked urgently that we consider doing that. Well, it was 2 nights ago, it was the representative of the Norotan Marine Rescue Unit, the fire department as the Marine Rescue Unit. And then the second piece was there was discussion that through a Boy Scout program, that they want to have a Boy Scout, I don't know if this is a specific EEL project, an idea to create a flyer that would be included when we mail out the stickers about kayak safety. That they wanted to create that. Again, they think there's not enough awareness of the importance of having flotation devices and actually wearing them. that people file a float plan, that people understand that just because it's a nice spring day, that the water might be 56 degrees and it gets very cold very quickly. So there was an offer, and that was Eric Barrett who was mentioning that. Do you know him?
I do know.
He's a member of the Coastal Commission also. He's, he's
We
on the
did the
fire
oyster
department.
thing with him. Remember?
So those were the two specific asks that came out of the Coastal Commission meeting on Monday night. Pam and I met with town administration regarding codifying the working relationships we have with the Friends groups, and it was also discussed that we should really scoop into that other groups that perform projects on our property, such as the Boy Scouts, that, you know, we really don't have anything right around, you know, formalizing how those arrangements should work.
In terms of, like, oh, you mean like in terms of how I handle, like.
There's nothing written, so what was really suggested is that as a commission, we need to develop a policy around that. So that will be a project that will need some volunteers to start developing a policy on, you know, the sort of relationship and the requirements of when any group is doing work on our property.
Which they made sure to say that is really protecting them.
Yes, and it protects all parties, not just the parks, but it protects those groups as well. So we had that meeting. Pam, Susan, and I attended a joint meeting of the RTM, Parks and Rec, and F&B committees to answer questions regarding the Beach and the Meadows project. We're up to date on that, so once more, but we attended that. And then the last thing I wanted to do is wish Tier well. Yay! She's doing 2 weeks. Oh my God. So we don't expect to see you at the next meeting, but if you want to come.
It's okay. Get by.
That's so
exciting. But please do let us know.
Yes, we are all about
She is one of those rare people who doesn't know what she's having, at least.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it.
I love
That's
it
so great.
No, it's great.
Especially since you have
Surprisingly.
3 boys.
3 boys you have?
Yes.
Oh, God.
So please do let us.
Just send us pink or blue.
No.
Let us know when you deliver.
Healthy, happy, that's all I have.
Okay. And then the last thing in our remaining few minutes is I need a motion to move into new business so that we can vote on it and approve our schedule for next year.
Yes.
So if somebody will make a motion. Mary Louise? Tier? Okay. Okay, so the schedule, the proposed schedule was sent out. It's really our standard schedule, which is what, the third Wednesday of the month. The only, you'll see for February, Pam reserved space for us on 3 different dates in February, and that's really the only, I think, discussion point is Jean, Pam, I'm sorry. Rushing. Which of those dates we picked. The February 19th would be our standard date. But that's the school vacation week. So the question is, do people prefer to go earlier on the 12th or later on the 26th? I'd go on the 12th.
It's a leap year.
So we want to go on the 12th?
Sure.
And then also I noticed that they're all at room 119. Do we want to deviate and go to the Paddle Hut for a few times, or?
I like being at the Paddle Hut personally.
Yeah,
sure.
it's nice.
I just like it.
I know, it's really nice, it's got a good
Yeah.
time.
It's
Wanna
got
do like
good
one or
vibes.
two-
which dates? So which dates do we want to do that?
Usually in the
It's
warm
usually
weather.
April,
Summer.
May.
April, May,
April, May.
June. I mean, can we go right through the summer there?
Sure.
If we-
Yeah, and we'll start back up here in September.
Yeah. Do people
So what
like?
is it? April, May, June, July, August? What are we doing?
Let's
Yes.
go right through August.
If we even have an August meeting. but-
Yeah, if we do.
Yep.
We did this year.
I did this year, I didn't.
That's because we're too.
Okay, and then the only other question is that we talked about meeting at the town
Garage.
garage in either January or February. Do we have a preference when we do that? In terms of the number?
When is it warmer there?
I assume they're not heat.
Yeah,
They do have heat.
And is there an issue with, like, if we're having the meeting there, there's a meeting room?
There is a meeting room.
There is a.
At nighttime you can go there?
We're. we
And is it,
discussed
like, would
having
that
a
meeting
there.
have
I
public
don't know.
comment? That's what I'm concerned about. Would we be able to
Yeah.
accommodate
Yeah.
any
That's
public
something
comment
they-
that would be going on?
I mean, we
Why don't we incorporate
might or
into
might
the
not, but
spring?
I think this is something we really want to do.
Or we can incorporate Jim's into the spring park tour.
That might be a better idea, given everything that's going on.
Yeah, I have to file it with the town clerk, so I've never seen.
Let's just file it like this, and we'll make it, it could be a special meeting if
We
we
wanna
choose
switch
it.
it, we could
Because
switch it
I
to
do have to
special
check,
meeting.
like what Jeannie's saying, we do have to check with Public Works to see, in terms of opening
I
up.
don't think the
it.
public would be allowed to use comment.
Jim seemed to think we could when I asked him about it. I
It's
don't
more
like
the public, if we have public comment and stuff like that. so
I
don't-
understand, but the commission also needs to do its work, and if for
Well, I
1
think we
month,
should do it like
you
as
know.
part of the
But we
parks
don't
tour or
have to have
something.
public comment.
And
We don't
there's
have to
not a
have public
requirement
comment.
to have public comment.
So that one particular meeting, we could not have
There's
it.
just so much going on, I can't imagine.
But even if you don't have public comment, don't we, public are allowed to come to the meeting?
Yes, they can.
Yes, it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just
So-
trying to accommodate people, I guess.
get it.
I understand that, but I also, we need to be holistic about all of the work we
Yeah.
need to do and all of the things we need to be doing, is my
So-
concern. And public can comment, if we're talking about Pear Tree, people can specifically come to the Pear Tree Building Committee as well. So there are many opportunities for that, but this was something that was very important to Jim, and I think we need to get an understanding of, so.
We should find out.
If you could find that out, and then we would just either, I mean,
Yeah, I'll find out.
We can go there.
so do we vote on this now with saying the option of having either the, say, the January or the February meeting at
Say February.
February?
Stay here.
Okay.
Because we have to talk about the fees in January, we have.
Okay. Okay, so let's do that.
The place might be hopping if there's a snowstorm though.
Yeah, if it's, there's just.
I mean, we might not be able to use it.
If there's a snowstorm, we wouldn't be meeting anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so, can I get a motion to accept the schedule? Okay, Mary Louise? Sarah? Okay, everybody?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sarah.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
We can take a motion to adjourn.
I got it. Mary Louise.
Second.
Okay, Michael and Susan and Louise.
All of us in
And then
favor?
Michael and Susan are doing
Dr. Jones.
adjourned.
Woo!